Hey guys. Tonight we begin with a surprisingly heartwarming story of a childhood surrounded by sparks, smoke, and a father whose idea of affection is handing you a pair of tongs before breakfast. You weren't born with a silver spoon, an iron hammer, and a peculiar smell that never washes out. While other kids got bedtime stories, you got tips on coal maintenance. And honestly, that's just how things were. So before you get cozy, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is. I love seeing how far our sleepy little time machine travels. Now, dim the lights, turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You enter the world to the gentle clanging of iron and the oddly comforting scent of scorched wool. Your first lullaby isn't a sweet melody. It's the rhythmic tap-tap of a hammer on metal and your father muttering something suspiciously like he's negotiating with the furnace. Your baby blanket? Lightly seasoned with soot. Very exclusive. From the moment you can toddle across the dirt floor without tripping into a bucket of nails. You're drafted into the family business. Apprentice is such a noble title. In practice, it means you're the designated holder of everything, runner of errands, and occasional distraction for angry customers waiting on shoe repairs. At age 6, you already have a deep personal relationship with the broom, the coal pile, and the concept of try not to touch that. It's hot. While other children skip stones or learn to whistle through blades of grass, you're busy learning how to avoid branding your elbows on a forge. Your favorite game is Guess What's Sharp, followed closely by Where Did That Blister Come From? And instead of being tucked into bed at night, you often fall asleep sitting upright against a barrel of iron nails, still clutching a soot-smudged rag like it's a beloved toy. Your father is the kind of man whose idea of encouragement is a grunt that might, if the stars align, means well done. He has hands like cracked stone and a heart that beats in rhythm with the bellows. You've never seen him cry. You've never seen him take a nap. You have seen him throw a horseshoe across the room with surgical precision when someone suggests using less charcoal. He doesn't give hugs. He gives lessons. And if you mess up, the lesson is loud, hot, and comes with the faint but memorable smell of a burning tunic. There are no holidays in the forge. Birthdays are acknowledged with a nod, and maybe the honor of holding the good hammer. Rainy days don't mean rest. They mean smoke chokes the room faster. You don't get weekends, you get mornings when the fire is kind enough to take a few minutes longer to roar. You don't work for gold, you work for bread, boiled root stew, and the occasional overly enthusiastic, you didn't ruin that completely. Payment comes in the form of being allowed to hold tools that weigh more than you, and being sent to deliver nails to a man who always forgets to wear pants. Your arms have grown strong by age 10, unlike a knight galloping into battle. Strong like someone who has carried buckets of water uphill every morning since they could pronounce the word bucket. Your back already creaks like a medieval door. Your hands are a landscape of calluses, nicks, and mysterious stains that no river water can explain. You smell like hot iron. You look like a chimney sweep who got lost. And you've started to develop a weird affection for your apron, the only thing in your life that regularly hugs you even if it's made of cracked leather and sometimes smokes a little. You don't hate the forge, not really. You occasionally fantasize about a quiet job like plague doctor or castle rat catcher. But then there are the moments, small ones, when the metal bends just right, when the horseshoe comes out perfect on the first try, when your father, out of nowhere, nods slightly and says, "Not bad." And for a moment, you're 10 feet tall and carved from oak. The forge hums with life, even when you're exhausted. The bellows puff like an old dragon snoring. The coals crackle like they're whispering secrets. And you, small and sleep-deprived, are the quiet conductor of this roaring, glowing, unpredictable orchestra. Some nights, you lie in the straw corner of the forge, listening to the fire die down. Your face smudged with soot and pride. Your ears ring from the day's hammering. Your muscles ache. Your dreams are full of glowing blades and flying sparks. And as the embers fade into soft orange glows, you smile faintly because tomorrow it begins again. And somehow, You're okay with the...
You'd think you'd get at least a few good years of carefree childhood before being introduced to the joys of molten iron. But nope. Growing up in a blacksmith's family is less frolic in the meadows and more swing this hammer before breakfast. Childhood isn't a phase. It's a short window where you're small enough to fetch tools from tight corners and not tall enough to question authority. Or reach the anvil, for that matter. At around the age when most kids are learning how to whistle, you're learning how to pump the bellows without falling face first into the fire. Your days begin with a nudge from your father's soot-streaked boot and the soft hiss of hot iron greeting cold air. If you're lucky, there's a crust of bread waiting. If you're not, there's smoke, and lots of it. Your official title is still apprentice, but let's be honest. It means ash sweeper, coal hauler, and designated flint lighter. You're the first to arrive and the last to leave. Your main job is to do everything no one else wants to, including sweeping under benches, organizing heavy iron bars, and standing very still while your father yells at a hinge. You're also the primary reason the forge stays cleanish. Well, cleaner than it would if it were just left to two grown men who measure time in how many swords until supper. And sweeping a forge isn't like sweeping a house. It's like trying to herd soot while the air actively fights you. But here's the fun part. No matter how much you clean, everything is still somehow covered in a thin, persistent layer of what historians might call occupational despair. You get paid in food, sometimes warm, always chewy, and the occasional grunt of approval, which in blacksmith speak is like a standing ovation. You might even get a half smile on perfect days, or your dad will let you hammer a practice piece. It's crooked, it's too thin on one end, but to you, it's a masterpiece. You made it, and no one else got burned in the process. Now, while you're sweating your soul out next to an angry anvil, your childhood friends, remember them, are out doing peasant kid things and playing in the fields and herding goats and trying not to fall in the well. They occasionally stop by to watch you work with wide eyes, amazed by the sparks, clangs, and the way your hair is always on the verge of catching fire. They ask questions. You answer with a shrug and a handful of soot. Then they run off, giggling, while you return to the severe business of holding a horseshoe with shaky tongues while your father roars, "Straighter."
Straightness, by the way, is a moving target. Your father always sees something wrong, no matter how aligned it looks to your eyeballs. It's too thin, too thick, too lumpy, too proud, not proud enough. A horseshoe that offends him returns to the fire like a naughty child in timeout. You learn quickly that perfection is expected, even if never fully defined. One day, your father will nod solemnly at a hinge resembling a banana. The next, he'll throw a flawless gate latch across the room for having no soul. Historians still argue whether this was part of some ancient master-apprentice psychology or if blacksmiths were just perpetually grumpy. It's not all iron and anguish, though. There's a rhythm to the forge, a clanging cadence that seeps into your bones. You recognize when the metal is too hot or not hot enough just by its glow. You can feel the difference between copper and iron through your gloves. You begin to hum to the hammer's beat, not just because it drowns out your father's colorful vocabulary. Eventually, he lets you pump the bellows unsupervised. Then, he lets you quench. Then, with the caution of a man handing over his life's work, he lets you do a minor repair on your own. Just a rake. Simple. Not much to ruin. You work on it all day, and when you hand it over, he gives it one look. Then, without a word, hangs it on the wall. It stays there. Your first real piece. Sure, it's a bit wonky. One tooth looks like it's running late for a meeting, but still, it's yours. You made something real, something sharpish. That night, lying on your scratchy straw mat with your arms aching and your hair smelling like regret, you let yourself smile. It's small, it's soot-covered, but it's a smile. And when the fire dims and the forge falls quiet, the silence no longer feels empty. It feels earned. You're part of something new, even if that something occasionally tries to burn off your eyebrows. By now, you figured out that the forge isn't just where you work. It's where you live, breathe, eat, occasionally nap, and very occasionally scream quietly into a bucket. It's your school, your playground, your punishment bench, and your life coach all rolled into one very warm, deafening, soot-covered room. There's no take your child to work day because you never leave. Your childhood is one long shift. The other village kids think you're exotic, mysterious even. He makes swords, they whisper as if you spend your afternoons battling dragons instead of sweating profusely over slightly bent nails.
And it's not just the heat, it's the ambiance. Your playground smells like smoke and old socks. The background music is a loop of clanging, coughing, and the occasional hiss of something going wrong in the fire. You've stopped flinching at sudden bangs, unexpected sparks, and your father shouting your name like you've just set the barn on fire, even though all you did was blink too loudly. And the games? Oh, you have games, like balance these tongs on your shoulder while stirring molten metal, or the ever-popular, fetch that without touching anything hot. Spoiler, everything is hot. The floor is hot, the walls are hot. The air itself is probably listed as an ingredient in roasted chicken recipes. You learn to move like a blacksmith's apprentice should, quickly, precisely, and always with at least 3 blisters forming at any moment. You also develop an impressive sixth sense for which surfaces will burn you on contact. You test things with the back of your hand like some medieval wizard of temperature. Your reflexes are honed to dodge flying sparks, wayward tools, and that one pot of mysterious bubbling goo your father insists will be useful later. You're never quite sure if it's flux, or just soup that went wrong. Either way, it hisses when touched, and you've learned not to ask questions. Meanwhile, your wardrobe has evolved into what can best be described as ash chic. You own 3 tunics, 2 are stained beyond recognition, and the third is, for best, which means it only has 1 tear and doesn't smell like regret. Your boots, held together by hope, twine, and possibly divine intervention, and your apron, that hardened slab of scorched leather, that's your security blanket. If it could talk, it would beg to be retired. Once soft and lovely, your hair now resembles something nesting in a chimney. No matter how often you try to wash it, and honestly you rarely get the chance, it smells like burnt toast and despair. You've stopped caring. Everyone knows what you are by the second cough and the third whiff. There's a particular pride in it, strange as it sounds. People look at your soot-streaked face and the scorch mark on your sleeve and they nod. Ah, blacksmith's lad, they say as though you've been knighted by exhaustion. They respect you, even if your eyes are permanently bloodshot, and you twitch whenever someone mentions urgent repairs, and you're learning. Truly. You've started to recognize metal by feel, the weight of it, the way copper sings when it's struck, the way iron groans before it splits. You don't just shape metal, you negotiate with it, convince it, beg it sometimes, especially when it's your 3rd attempt at a hinge, and the customer is already muttering about going to the guy in the next village. You're also discovering what the scholars never tell you. The forge is a jealous teacher. It demands your attention, your time, your skin occasionally, and if you dare take a moment too long to daydream, it reminds you with a glowing red tap to the ankle. 1 second of distraction and boom, you've got a new scar in a lecture that begins with, "When I was your age." Historians still argue whether blacksmiths developed immunity to sleep, or just learned to nap with one eye open and a hammer in hand. Because let's be clear, you don't get proper rest. You rest between tasks. You nap, standing up. You learn to sleep through noise, heat, and the rhythmic chorus of life being hammered into shape beside your head. Occasionally, a customer visits with something weird. A bell that only rings once. A ceremonial sword that must feel noble. Or a shepherd who insists his sheep recognize the sound of properly forged hinges. You don't question it. You nod. You write it down in the soot with your finger. You do your best. You realize that being a blacksmith isn't just about making things. It's about solving problems. It's about listening. It's about crafting valuable something out of chaos. And that knowledge helps the long days feel shorter, even if your back disagrees. By the end of each day, you're so tired, you could fall asleep mid-hammer swing. You often doze off while holding something pointy, which explains that you once woke up with a rivet in your shoe. But even as you slump in the corner, soot-streaked and dead on your feet, there's a flicker of pride. Because slowly, painfully, with blistered fingers and sleepless eyes, you're becoming a blacksmith. As usual, you wake before the sun to the warm aroma of ash, singed leather, and something that might once have been a cabbage. It's not exactly the smell of morning pastries, but your nose has given up on hope and settled for familiarity. Your body creaks as you sit up, every joint protesting like it's auditioning for a medieval choir of groans. Welcome to another glorious day of heavy lifting, minor burns, and intense eye contact with a bucket of coals. Breakfast is quick and practical. A bit of stale bread, maybe some cheese if the rats haven't claimed it, and water that's been boiled so many times it now tastes like yesterday's forage. You chew while slipping on your apron, which is more patchy than leather by this point. It crackles when you move. A small ecosystem of soot particles follows you like a loyal pet. The forge roars back to life with the usual drama. Bellows groaning, coals snapping. Your father mutters something to the fire like it's an old friend who owes him money. The heat punches you in the face before your eyes fully adjust. And there it is. The heart of your world, glowing with the kind of intensity usually reserved for dragon lairs and awkward dinner conversations. Your first task, shaping nails. Again, if hell had a recycling program, it would be this. Thousands of tiny, rebellious pieces of metal that refuse to be straight, uniform, or obedient. They bend, they warp, they stare at you metaphorically as if to say, do your worst. And you do. For hours. One of the great untold truths of blacksmithing is that a massive chunk of it isn't forging swords or majestic gates, it's nails. Endless nails. For fences, carts, and houses that might fall if your work is off by a hair's breadth. It's not glamorous, it's not even interesting, but it's necessary, and let's be honest, you've come to admire the stubbornness of those little devils. Midway through your 10th dozen, your fingers start to cramp. Not the gentle, I've been writing too long kind of cramp. No, this is the medieval claw that makes it feel like your hand is turning into a set of pliers. You stretch, you flex, you shake it out, and then you keep going, because there are still 43 more to make before the baker arrives to shout about his broken oven door. By now, you've mastered the art of working while your mind drifts. You think about lunch, about the sound a finished blade makes, about what clouds smell like. You've never been high enough to know. But always, just under the surface, is the fire, the heat, the rhythm. You're a human metronome powered by obligation and muscle memory. Outside, life carries on. You hear children laughing, always odd when you're elbow deep in something that smells like scorched regret. They're playing some game involving a hoop and a stick, and they have no sense of urgency in blacksmithing. You envy their lightness, their ability to run. Conversely, you move like someone squatting over coals for 8 years, which you have. Then, disaster. A horseshoe flies off the anvil mid-strike and skitters like an angry crab across the floor. You leap to retrieve it, only to stub your toe against a block of iron. Someone, definitely your father, left directly in your path. You do that silent hop of pain, the one where you don't scream, but your whole face folds in on itself like a dying accordion. Your father glances over, snorts, and says, "You're not paying attention." And while that's technically true, you were also trying to imagine what clouds smell like, so, fair enough. You return to your station, limping slightly, and finally finish the last nails, just as the baker storms in, demanding stronger, straighter, more dignified nails. You hand them over with the calm resignation of someone who knows they will be back next week, complaining again. Dignity is hard to forge. As the day drags on, you're briefly promoted to hammering out hinges. This is considered a step up. Hinges have curves, style. They're mildly artistic, in a make sure the door doesn't fall off way. You focus, you measure, you tap the curve just right. And when you finish, it swings. Not metaphorically, literally. You swing it from your fingers, and it moves like a hinge. Success. You show your father, who glances at it, grunts, and moves on. In your world, it is equivalent to applause, a standing ovation, and a bouquet of roses. By dusk, your face is speckled with ash freckles, your arms are shaking, and your spine is writing angry letters to your legs. You eat dinner barely tasting it, some broth, some kind of root, and something that may have once been a lentil. When you finally collapse onto your straw mat, the forge glows in the corner, and your father is still hammering away. You watch him for a minute. The way he moves, the way he talks to the metal without using words. You wonder if you'll ever be like that. Then your eyes drift shut, and the day dissolves into dreams. Dreams of nails that bend themselves, of hinges that assemble with a wink, of cool air and soft ground, the smell of something that isn't charcoal, and fatigue. And maybe a day when you wake up, and someone else is holding the tongs. The sun's not even up yet, but the forge already is. It has no concept of time, just an endless appetite for wood, sweat, and small pieces of your soul. You drag yourself out of bed, or more accurately out of your nest of scratchy straw and soot-dusted cloth, and shuffle into the workshop like a sleepwalking chimney sweep. Your boots are still damp from yesterday's near-dousing incident. Classic. Today, it's nails again. Of course it's nails. And not just any nails, essential nails. Nobleman's nails. For a chicken coop. A prestigious chicken coop, apparently. One that requires top-tier craftsmanship for poultry that probably have their titles. Your father says nothing. He points at the iron rod stacked by the anvil and hands you your hammer with the same gravitas as a king bestowing a sword. You nod, solemnly. You understand. These chickens demand excellence. And so begins another round of the game you've known as smash the iron until it submits. There's a rhythm to it now. Heat, strike, flip, strike again. Quench, inspect, sigh, repeat. Over and over. You enter what can only be described as the hammer trance, where your brain checks out and your arms do all the thinking. Of course, even in a trance, things go wrong. The third nail cracks down the middle. The fourth bends like it's practicing yoga. The fifth one, well, the fifth one takes a personal interest in your thumb. You try not to yelp, but your face contorts into the silent scream of someone being gently murdered by metal. You stick your thumb into the water bucket, where it sizzles ominously. Congratulations. You've been baptized into another day of pain. And here comes the fun part. After hours of hammering, the nobleman's steward finally shows up, gives your beautiful, slightly sweaty pile of nails a glance, grunts, and says, "Too small." No thank you, no payment, just rejection. You look at your father. He shrugs. Make bigger ones. Of course. Bigger nails. Giant, majestic nails. For the noble chickens and their high-born feet. You start again. While you're on your 20th attempt at poultry palatial fasteners, your father works on something far more exciting. A sword. A real one. Not a kitchen knife. It's not a big skewer. A weapon. It gleams in the firelight, still unfinished, rough, and magnificent. You try not to stare too long, but it's hard. That's what you imagined blacksmithing would be when you were younger. Shaping tools of glory and legend, not chicken architecture. He catches your gaze, grunts, and after a pause that feels like it takes a year, says, "You'll make one someday." Your heart skips. Not because he promised. Blacksmiths don't promise. But because he didn't say, never. Around midday, the sun finally rises to join the punishment. The forge grows hotter. The sweat drips faster. And your back feels like negotiating a truce with your spine and losing badly. You open the forge door for a breath of fresh air, and are greeted by a gust of wind carrying what might be hay, possibly bird droppings, and someone's laundry. You shut the door again. The forge may be terrible, but at least it isn't perfect. You're rewarded with lunch, a piece of bread so hard you could use it as a spare hammer, and a stew so mysterious it might qualify as a potion. You eat both, gratefully. Then comes an unexpected visitor. A traveling tinker, hauling a cart full of broken pans and wild stories. He needs his kettle patched and his ladle re-straightened. He also needs someone to listen while he loudly explains that he once sharpened a duke's arrowheads using only a rock and sheer charisma. You nod politely, patch his kettle, and accept his payment. A coin, slightly bent, and a smile entirely crooked. He leaves, whistling. You envy his freedom, his movement, his lack of soot in every crevice. But also, you pity him. He doesn't belong anywhere. His hands are too clean. He doesn't carry the weight of the forge, which, strangely, you now wear like a badge. As evening arrives, your father finishes the sword. He lets you hold it, just for a moment. It's heavier than you imagined, not just in weight, but in meaning. This thing could defend a village, or conquer one. It could change someone's life, maybe end someone else's. But briefly, it's just you, the sword, and the quiet pride humming through your calloused fingertips. Too light, your father says, snatching it back. But you saw the flicker in his eye, the almost smile. That counts. The day ends like all the others. Your muscles ache, your face is streaked with soot, and your shirt is stuck to your back in 3 different places. You're exhausted, but not just physically. A weariness comes from doing the same thing repeatedly, knowing you'll do it again tomorrow. But tonight, as you lie down on your pile of not quite hay and exhale the day's weight, you feel something else too. You're improving. Slowly, painfully, but undeniably. And someday, the sword won't be your father's. It'll be yours. Your father's grunts have evolved. They're no longer sounds. They're a fully developed language now. Somewhere between a growl, a warning bell, and a very judgmental sigh. You've become fluent. A short grunt. You've done something wrong. A long grunt. You've done something terrible. A grunt accompanied by a pointed finger and narrowed eyes. That means fix it before I throw it into the river and possibly you with it. Who needs flowery speeches when communication can happen through exhalations and eyebrow movements? Today the forge is extra moody. The fire's slow to catch, the bellows are sulky, and your father looks like a man who's already decided the morning is a disappointment. You smile cheerfully, which is met with a grunt that loosely translates to, "Don't push your luck." Your task? Simple, yet impossible. Reforge a set of plow blades for the farmer down the road. The very same farmer who once tried to pay in fermented turnips and a goat that turned out to be imaginary. You begin shaping the metal, each blow echoing off the walls like a frustrated drum solo. There's an art to it. You have to listen for the hiss when iron hits the water, the feel of resistance when you swing too softly, the sound it makes when it's just right, solid, satisfying, like a complete stop at the end of a very long sentence. Your fingers are clever now. They remember temperatures by touch, weight by feel, and can tell if a blade will warp just by how it wobbles in your grip. But even so, your father watches. Always watching. Sometimes you wonder if he sleeps with one eye open and a hammer under his pillow. Halfway through the morning, he finally speaks, actual words. Not bad. It's like being knighted. You blink at him, unsure if you've heard correctly. He notices your surprise and follows it up with a grunt saying, "Don't get used to it." And you won't. You've learned that praise is rare, deliberate, and immediately followed by another round of criticism. It's the medieval version of constructive parenting. Tough love served with a side of flying iron filings. Outside, a storm is brewing. Thunder rumbles like a far-off cart rolling downhill. You can smell the rain in the air, damp and metallic. The kind of day where even the anvil seems cranky. The door slams open and a knight walks in. A real one. Chainmail, muddy boots, and that "I'm better than everyone else here" energy that clings like a bad cologne. He removes his helmet and thunks it onto the work table, raising one eyebrow at the state of the forge. You, covered in soot, holding a half-melted blade, and chewing on a piece of bread that may be wood at this point, give him a polite nod.
"Need my sword sharpened," he says like it's the most crucial sentence anyone's ever uttered. Your father doesn't even look up. "Tomorrow," the knight bristles. "Today." You brace yourself. You've seen what happens when people argue with your father. It's usually loud, occasionally smoky. Sometimes it involves a well-aimed ladle. But today, there's only silence. Then your father nods toward you. His job. You freeze mid-breath. Yours? Is he giving you a knight's sword? not a rake, not a horseshoe. A real weapon, used by someone who stabs things for a living. You take the blade with reverence. It's heavy, worn, and nicked from battle. You study it like it's a map of some ancient treasure. Every groove tells a story. Every scratch is a past mistake. And now, it's your turn to write on it. Sharpening a sword isn't just grinding it against a stone and hoping for the best. It's patience, angle, pressure, rhythm, and a healthy amount of fear, because if you mess this up, the next clang might be from your funeral bell. You begin slowly, carefully. The wheel spins. Sparks fly. The night paces like a worried rooster. Your father leans back, arms crossed, eyes closed, but you know he's listening, judging, calculating. The final polish takes your breath away. Not because it's perfect. It's not, but because it's yours. Yours. You shaped it. You gave it new life. You present it with both hands. The knight inspects it. He swings it once. Grunts. Your father grunts. You feel like grunting too, but that might be too much. Once the knight leaves, without tipping naturally, you catch your father giving the sword a second glance. He doesn't say anything, but he doesn't redo it either. That's how you know it was good. The storm finally breaks outside. Rain hammers the roof like it's trying to compete with your hammer strokes. The forge fills with the scent of wet earth and cooling iron. The light dims, but the glow from the coals keeps your world alive. You sit on a stool that wobbles ominously and take a rare moment to breathe. Your father begins sharpening another blade. You join him. The rhythm returns. Clang, clang, pause, grunt. You smile. You've reached a point where blisters don't even surprise you anymore. You don't complain. You don't wince. You look down at your hand, nod thoughtfully at the new pain bubble forming on your palm, and continue hammering like it's just another Tuesday, which it is. Probably. You've also lost all sense of weekdays. The forge doesn't care what day it is or your schedule. If the fire's burning, you're working. Your muscles no longer scream. They whisper. Quiet, resigned whispers like, "Really? Again?" Your arms are thickening from years of lifting metal bars and swinging hammers, but not in a heroic way. You're not carved like a statue, but shaped like a broom left out in the rain, solid, slightly warped, and permanently hunched. You've also developed a special walk. Not quite a limp, not quite a strut. It's the gait of someone who has stepped on too many hot nails and learned never to trust the ground. There's a rhythm to it. Clomp, shuffle, wince, repeat. Today starts like most. Smoky, loud, and at least 10 degrees hotter than is medically advisable. Your first task is hauling buckets of water from the well, because it is. No matter how skilled you get or how many nails, blades, or fancy decorative hinges you've made, you're still the guy who gets stuck carrying water because you have young legs. You suspect you'll still have young legs at 40. The bucket handle bites into your hand. Your back makes that fun little twinge move again. But you march on, water sloshing onto your boots, trying not to think about how those same boots squish now when you walk. You pass the baker's boy on the way back. He nods, cheerful and flour-dusted. You nod back, completely covered in soot and deeply envying the scent of bread that follows him like a halo. Bread. Imagine smelling like something pleasant. You, meanwhile, smell like you lost a fight with a fireplace and then rolled in oil for good measure. Back in the forge, the fire welcomes you like a jealous older sibling. Hot, loud, and immediately demanding your full attention. You refill the quench barrel, toss your gloves onto a hook, and glance over at today's project. Horseshoes. Again. At this point, you've probably made more horseshoes than horses in the kingdom. Each one must be shaped just right. Not too thin, not too thick, not too... Why does this look like a butter knife? The village stable master is very particular. You learned that after he threw a shoe back at your father once and nearly lost his eyebrows to the retaliation. As you work, the clangs start to blend into your thoughts. You think about when you burned your tunic sleeve and pretended it was fashionable. About the one nice day you had last summer when the firewood delivery was late and you had 3 hours off. Pure luxury. You used that time to lie under a tree and stare at the clouds, until a splinter in your back made you regret ever enjoying anything. A rooster crows outside. Or maybe it's a goose. Honestly, it could be someone yelling. Your hearing is compromised. Years of hammering have made every conversation sound like it's happening in a tunnel during a windstorm. Your father says that's normal. You're not sure if he's right, or if he just got tired of people talking to him. Then, mid-horseshoe, a strange sensation. Not pain, not exhaustion. Something worse. Hunger. You forgot to eat. You glance toward the corner where your lunch sat. Once. Gone. It was probably snatched by the cat that lives under the workbench. A soot-covered menace who refuses to leave and answers to absolutely no one. His name is Smoke, and you suspect he's immortal. You sigh and keep hammering. The stomach can wait, the horses can't. Hours pass. You hammer. You shape. You quench. You stack the finished shoes in a neat little pyramid and admire your work for exactly 3 seconds before someone bursts through the door, holding a broken pitchfork and a story about how it just snapped in half all on its own. You do not believe him. Still, you take the pitchfork. You fix it. You don't comment on the very obvious shoe-shaped dent in the handle. As evening nears, your father gestures toward the anvil. Let's see your swing. It's a test. He does this sometimes. No warning. Just a challenge. You square up, grip the hammer, and bring it down. Not too hard, not too light, just right. Clang. He nods. That's all. But it's enough to make you feel 10 feet tall. Later, while sweeping up the day's mess, ashes, metal shavings, and part of a sandwich someone dropped, you find yourself humming. The same tune your father hums. You never noticed it before. It's not a real melody, more like a forge-born lullaby. Rhythmic, soothing. It's entirely out of tune. You hum it anyway. That night, you lie in your corner, muscles humming their little protest song, hands bandaged, and the taste of ash still lingering in your throat. You fall asleep mid-thought, dreaming this time of nothing sharp, just clouds and bread and the softest bench in the world. There's a smell that lives in your nose now, not just for today, forever. It's a custom blend of burnt iron, sweat, old leather, and what might be cabbage, although you don't remember the last time you ate any. It doesn't wash off, it doesn't fade. You're unsure if it's coming from your clothes, skin, or soul. But it's there. Constant. Cozy, almost. Like a mildly offensive pet you've grown attached to. You've reached that glorious phase of apprenticeship where you no longer flinch every time a spark lands on your tunic. You swat it off like a mildly inconvenient fly. Your arms swing the hammer with the ease of muscle memory, and your knees only creak a little when you crouch. Progress. Like all others, today begins with your face in a cold water basin, and a moment of quiet negotiation with the universe. You promise not to complain if your arms stop aching long enough to hold your breakfast. The universe remains non-committal. You munch on your stale bread, which has now aged to the texture of roofing tile, and prepare for the first task of the day. Restoring a broken cauldron for the local innkeeper. The innkeeper is a lovely man, if by nice you mean chronically angry and prone to threatening lawsuits that don't exist yet. His cauldron has seen things. Possibly a small fire, definitely an attempted stew involving bones that shouldn't be in a stew. It's cracked along the base, and your job is to patch it so convincingly that soup won't leak out like it's trying to escape its destiny. You clean, heat, hammer a fresh patch into place, and give it a loving whack for luck. Success. You even test it with water. No leaks. You briefly consider writing poetry about it, but don't have the time. Or the energy. Or the literacy. The innkeeper grumbles his thanks and drops a coin on the table. It rolls off. You both stare at it. Neither of you moves to retrieve it. Eventually, he grunts, which means the same thing it always does. See you tomorrow, with something else that's broken. Then comes the farm equipment, because it's always the farm equipment. A scythe with a dent the size of your head, a plow blade that someone thought could double as a sled. It's a rake that's seen more combat than most swords. Each piece is a little different. Each is a quiet puzzle that must be solved with heat, pressure, and complete disregard for comfort. While you're hammering away, the village elder wanders in. He never brings anything to fix. He stands there, arms crossed, offering completely unsolicited commentary. Today, he announces, blacksmiths used to be stronger. Saw one once who could lift an ox. You nod politely. You have never lifted an ox. You've lifted a bucket of water that felt like an ox, but that's not quite the same. You return to your work, tuning him out with the practiced ear of someone who's heard this story 17 times already. Midday approaches, and with it, the heat intensifies. The forge is no longer a workspace. It's a sauna run by a furious dragon. Your shirt sticks to your back. Your eyebrows consider fleeing. You drink water by the ladle and wonder if your body is 80% sweaty now. And then, something magical happens. A delivery. A cart of fresh charcoal arrives with it, the charcoal merchant's daughter. She's your age, maybe a year older, and smells like pine smoke and responsibility. She doesn't say much but lifts sacks, like they weigh nothing, and once punches a boy for insulting her boots. You try to look impressive, which is difficult when covered in soot and holding a ladle. Still, you nod casually, meant to say, I am strong, mysterious, and very good at metal. It seems more like, I may have forgotten how standing works. She unloads the sacks, gives you a curt smile, and vanishes like a chimney sprite. You spend the next 30 minutes hammering with unusual enthusiasm. After lunch, some stew, probably featuring the same vegetables that refused to soften yesterday, you return to a new task, fixing ornate hinges for the church doors. They were imported, allegedly, which in this village means came from 2 towns over. They're fancy, decorative, the kind of hinges that scream, this is a holy building, please don't lean on the walls. You polish them, reshape the pins, and avoid accidentally sneezing molten metal across the floor. Your father inspects them when you're done. He gives a slow nod. That's it. That's your praise quota for the week. The church warden arrives to collect them. He inspects the work like a man trying to spot invisible flaws and eventually says, yes, acceptable. He hands over a coin pouch that jingles. Real payment. You resist the urge to clutch it dramatically and whisper, we feast tonight. Evening settles over the village, and the fire dims with it. You rake the coals gently, whispering a soft goodnight to the forge, because you've started talking to it. It feels polite. The tools are cleaned, the ashes swept. The work, for now, is done. You sit briefly on the stool beside the anvil, staring at your hands. They're rough, blackened, and covered in tiny scars. But they're also steady, capable. Hands that make things, fix things, build things. You hear your father behind you, not speaking, just wiping soot off the workbench. He doesn't need to say anything. You've both survived another day, and as the last ember glows, and the forge exhales a sleepy puff of smoke, you smile faintly. You still smell like despair, but it's your despair. There comes a point, somewhere between your 1,000th nail and your 100th horseshoe, when you stop thinking of yourself as a person and start thinking of yourself as a hammer with legs. You no longer pause to question it. You swing. The forge has become your rhythm, your reality. And in an extraordinary, slightly smoky way, you're home. You wake up coughing, not because you're sick. No, your lungs are just doing their morning ritual of trying to expel the ghost of every fire you've ever lit. Clear your throat, wipe your face with a cloth, mostly a soot delivery system, and get to work. Today's task: reforge a wagon wheel rim. Sounds simple. Sounds quaint. It sounds like the sort of job that would be relaxing if it didn't involve hauling a half-ton iron ring that refuses to cooperate. It's like wrestling a very stubborn, very circular boar. You grunt. The ring grunts back. You set it on the anvil, and it immediately slides off. Twice. You finally get it to balance, start heating it in the forge, and discover it's slightly warped. Just a fun surprise. Probably from being used in a race by the village boys. On cobblestones. While drunk. You sigh. Loudly. The kind of sign that carries generational weight. Your father walks by and gives the wheel a single glance. "Hit it harder," he says. Of course, the answer to everything. You do hit it harder. And harder still. Until the iron begins to comply, reluctantly, like a teenager doing chores. Eventually, you win. Or rather, you compromise. The wheel is round enough that it won't kill anyone immediately. And that's about as good as it gets. The client arrives, a traveling merchant with a nose for profits and a voice like a duck trying to negotiate rent. He squints at your work, taps it once with a finger, then hands over 3 copper coins with all the grace of a man parting with his favorite child. "Fine," he mutters. "Should last a season." You want to respond, "It'll last 5, but you smile politely and wash your hands in the bucket that smells like someone tried to invent soup and gave up halfway. After that, it's time for repairs. Buckles, hinges, chains, and oh joy, a farmer's scythe blade used to dig up rocks. Not dirt, rocks. It's as dull as a spoon and twice as dented. You could throw it in the scrap bin, but no, you're going to fix it because that's what you do. You're the fixer. And as much as it hurts your back, knuckles, and occasionally your dignity, there's something satisfying about it. This blade may not be elegant, but it'll slice wheat again. Eventually, if you hit it hard enough. You take a quick break on the back step of the forge. The village hums around you. Someone's shouting about missing geese. A child runs past, barefoot and screaming with joy. You sip water that's slightly warm and metallic, but it's liquid and yours. For a moment, you sit there, breathing. Not deeply, your lungs object to that, but enough. Then the bell rings. Not a church bell, your bell, the one hanging by the forge door. It clangs when someone arrives with a request, or a complaint, or both. You shuffle over to greet the customer and find a surprise. A noblewoman. Not the usual type, mind you. She's not powdered or perfumed. Her cloak is travel-stained, and her boots suggest she's been on the road long enough to know how to throw a knife and mean it. She lays a dagger on your workbench. It's finely crafted, with a silver hilt and delicate filigree bent slightly out of shape. She doesn't explain how. She says, "Can you fix it?" You nod. Of course you can. You're not new here. You sneak glances at her as you heat the blade and carefully tap it back into form. She watches closely, arms crossed, saying nothing. You feel oddly nervous, not because of the work, but because she's quiet. Too quiet. You've grown accustomed to loud clients. This one evaluates. The repair takes longer than it should because your fingers are slightly shaking and you accidentally use the fancy cloth to wipe your brow, which smears ash across your face in a bold diagonal streak. Great. Now, you look like a bandit with poor hygiene. She lifts the blade, tests its balance, and smiles when it's done. "You're better than the last one," she says. "He cracked it, and possibly cried." Then, she flips a silver coin onto the bench. Real silver. Enough for a feast, new boots, and maybe, just maybe, a day off. She walks out without another word. You stare after her for a long moment. Your father appears behind you and grunts. You smeared ash on your nose. You wipe it off. Maybe. As speak as you watch the same thing. He says, "Just so much liash with a plate," and he watch you get off an eeks and explode. You're Selvern Bandit, reaching your spaith. You stable to make these no's, and you gets. Later that evening, as you file down a bolt for someone who doesn't know what a bolt is, but insists he needs one, your mind drifts. Not to the noblewoman, not to the silver coin, but to the thought that you might be getting good at this. Not just competent, not just functional. Good. It's a strange thought, one you don't quite know what to do with. So you tuck it away behind the knowledge of how to shape a hinge, and the memory of what it feels like to hold something you've truly crafted. That night, your dreams are different. Not swords or hammers or fire, but the quiet moment after the work is done, and the sound of the bell still gently ringing. You're swinging a hammer in your dreams again. At least you think it's a dream. It's hard to tell anymore. Your brain has officially filed hammering under both conscious activity and background noise. You wake up mid-swing, elbow in the air, hand curled into a fist, aiming at a completely innocent lump of straw. Thankfully, you stop yourself before punching your betting into next week. Your father's already up, of course. He's been awake since dawn, or possibly since 1352. You're not convinced he sleeps at all. He just occasionally enters a state of low-energy glaring. This morning he's sharpening chisels with the quiet concentration of a man preparing for battle. You stretch, groan, and check for new aches. You find 3. 2 in your back, 1 in a place you didn't know could ache. Excellent. Everything's normal. The forge feels different today. Not cooler. Never that. It's still hot enough to cook a turnip just by leaving it near the bellows. But there's something in the air. A buzz. A sense that something big is coming. And then, the messenger arrives. He doesn't knock. He bursts in, all red tunic and urgency, waving a sealed scroll like he's delivering news of a dragon attack. You're halfway through brushing coal dust off your sleeves when he announces, "The Baron's men are coming!" This is either excellent news or terrible news. It turns out that the Baron's retinue is stopping in your village on their way to somewhere far more critical. And wouldn't you know it? They need repairs. Urgent repairs. Wagon wheels, weapon hilts, armor straps, hinges, a decorative fireplace poker that snapped off during a fencing demonstration. You don't ask. Also, you do know that every smith in the region wants that job. Noble commissions mean coin, recognition, maybe even something called not being yelled at for a day. Your father says nothing. He gives a tight nod, then turns to you. Get ready. In blacksmith language, this means drink something, wipe your face, and mentally prepare to do 3 days' worth of work in 12 hours. You spring into action. Tools are laid out, coals stoked, water buckets filled. Your father checks the forge like a general inspecting a battalion. You clean your anvil, even though it will be dirty again in 6 minutes. Everything must look presentable. Then, they arrive. 6 men on horseback. 1 in a shiny breastplate that hasn't seen combat but looks fantastic. 2 carriages. 1 for gear, 1 for someone who thinks riding a horse is for peasants. The nobleman himself doesn't speak. He sends his steward, a man whose facial expression suggests he's deeply disappointed by everything he sees, including you. He lays out the list. It's long. You nod. Your father nods. Everyone nods. Then they leave, giving you a deadline to make a rooster weep. And just like that, the race begins. You start with the sword hilt, a jagged mess of bad welding and broken pride. You remove the pieces, reshape the base, and fit new steel with such precision that even you are surprised. Your father doesn't comment, but you catch him watching, and that's enough. Next, the armor strap, torn clean through. You heat, bend, and patch the buckle like your life depends on it, which it might. Nobles aren't known for their patience, or generosity, or understand that you're a human being, not a soot-covered repair fairy. Hours blur. You fix the fireplace poker. You reshoe a horse with hooves the size of your face. You realign a bent wheel that squeals in protest with every rotation. You don't stop. Not for food, not for water. Not even when Smoke the cat tries to nap on the hot anvil and nearly becomes a cautionary hail. You work until your hands are numb, and your knees start whispering, "We were not made for this." And finally, you're done. Everything's repaired, polished, and stacked like a shrine to functionality. The steward returns. He inspects your work with the enthusiasm of someone sniffing sour milk. You hold your breath. Your father has his breath. The steward gives a slow nod. Then he says the magic words, "Passable." You resist the urge to collapse. He tosses a bag of coins onto the table. Real silver. Enough to buy material. Supplies. A proper meal. Maybe even new gloves. The Baron does not appear. But his men collect the goods and leave with 0 expressions of thanks. The hoofbeats fade. Silence. Then your father speaks. "Good work." You nearly fall off your stool. Not because he said it, but because of how he said it. Not grunted and not muttered. These are actual words with a tone that almost sounds like pride. You sit in that silence, letting it soak in. Later, the two of you eat dinner in quiet companionship. Bread, cheese. Something that might have once been a carrot. You toast with mugs of ale so warm and flat it might be classified as a disappointment, but it's yours, hard-earned. And as you stretch out beside the forge, listening to the crackle of coals winding down for the night, Your body aches in that deep, glowing way that means something was accomplished. You survived a noble's demands. You didn't mess it up, and your father said, "Good work." Honestly, you could sleep for a week. Your back creaks like an old tavern door, and it's not mid-morning. Every time you stand up straight, something pops. You're not sure if it's your spine, your knees, or just your soul giving an occasional protest. One thing's certain. You're barely into your teens, and your body is already auditioning for the role of village elder with mysterious aches. You stretch. Slowly, carefully, regretfully. The forge looms behind you, fire already roaring, bellows sighing like it too has had enough of this nonsense. Your father's there, of course, always is. He's sharpening a chisel with the solemn expression of a man preparing to fix a church door or start a revolution. Possibly both. Today is maintenance day. Not glamorous, not exciting, just essential. Every tool must be checked, oiled, sharpened, and whispered kind words so it doesn't betray you later. You start with the hammers. There are 8, each slightly different, each with its personality. There's Big Harold, the one with the cracked handle and serious commitment issues. Little Harold, who's somehow heavier than he looks. And Angry Harold, who has taken several of your thumbnails in battle. You inspect each one, cleaning off rust and tightening loose heads. You hum as you work. A quiet tune your father occasionally whistles but denies knowing. It's become your free music and the ever-present percussion of your joints. After the hammers come the tongs. They're stubborn, always pinching your fingers or dropping hot metal like they've decided to unionize. You oil their joints, test their grip, and whisper, "Please behave today," which probably helps. Probably. Then you move on to the bellows, the forge's lungs. They wheeze now. Not dramatically, just enough to make you nervous. Patch a hole with boiled leather and some twine, then test them. They puff reluctantly, like an older man being asked to stand up. Still, they work for now. Maintenance is finished, and you turn to today's first real task, repairing a broken cart axle. Again. Cart axles are the eternal curse of your life. They crack, they warp, they splinter dramatically at the worst possible moment, usually when someone delivers fish or barrels of pickled cabbage. You inspect this one and discover it's not just broken, it's been screamed into 2 pieces by someone who thinks carts double as war machines. You heat, sand, and refit the iron bands. Your hands know the motions now. Scoop the coals, angle the piece, flip it just before it screams, and quench as it owes you money. Your mind drifts while you work. Not away from the task, never that, but toward the sound, the forge's voice, the hiss of the water, the puff of the bellows, the resounding clang that tells you something is just right. It's a rhythm now, like breathing. You're pulled from your trance by a familiar shriek. "What do you mean it's not ready?" Ah, the baker's back. He stomps into the forge like a puffed-up rooster, waving a rolling pin and demanding to know where his oven latch is, the one you fixed yesterday. He broke again by slamming the door too hard in rage over burnt bread. Your father raises one eyebrow and gestures to you. Your problem now. Recently, you calmly hand the latch over. Fixed again. Better than before. The baker glares at it like it insulted his pastry. Then he snatches it and huffs half-heartedly. "Thanks, I guess." You smile. You've developed an immunity to rude clients. It's a mental callus. It doesn't even sting anymore. Then comes the monk. You like the monk. He speaks softly, always thanks you, and once brought honey as payment. Today he has a cracked bell. Again. You suspect he likes visiting. You don't mind. You fix the bell, polish it until it gleams like a tiny moon, and hand it back. He bows. "A beautiful sound," he says, ringing it lightly. You nod, proud. That bell is going to sing across the village for years, and every time it does, a tiny part of your soul will ring with it. By midday, your knees feel like they've been chewed on. You sit briefly, drinking water from a ladle that tastes suspiciously like onions, probably from the stew. It's probably your fault. You don't care. Hydration is hydration. Your father walks over holding a small blade. "Try making the next one." Your heart skips. You? Make a blade? A blade? Not a repair, not a shoe. Not a glorified dinner fork. It's a real blade. Short, simple, but still, a blade. You prep the billet, Heat the iron and start shaping it. It takes hours. Your swings are measured. Your grip is steady. You focus as your life depends on it. Because in a way, it does. This is your test. When it's done, your father holds it up. It gleams. It's not perfect. The tip is a little stubby, and the spine has a faint warp. But it's real, and you made it. He gives the faintest nod. You grin like an idiot. The day ends quietly. You clean the tools, sweep the ash, and store the new blade on a shelf that now feels just a little taller. Your back still aches. Your joints still pop. But your hands feel steady. And that night, as you drift off to sleep, you dream not of work, but of forging something new, something yours. Let's talk about your hands. They used to be small, soft, maybe even a little pudgy, back when you were allowed to be a child for 6 seconds. Now they look like they've lived 5 lifetimes and fought a bear in each one. Calloused, cracked, blistered, stained. If someone tried to read your palms, they'd get halfway through and just hand you a salve. You wake to find your fingers stuck in a curled position as if your hands are trying to continue hammering even in your sleep. You pry them open slowly, carefully. There's that one knuckle that always clicks, and that pinky that's perpetually sore because Angry Harold, the hammer, not the neighbor, slammed it during last week's hinge disaster. Your fingernails? A chaotic collection of blackened crescents, chipped edges, and places where fingernails decided, I'm out. You've tried cleaning them before. Really. But after the 3rd attempt left you just as dirty and twice as wet, you gave up. You now consider soot a personality trait. Today's project is decorative. A set of iron window grills for the Reeves Manor House. The Reeves wife wants something floral. This is hilarious, because you've never even seen a rose up close, unless you count that one time you fell into a thorn bush and smelled like regret for a week. Still, a commission is a commission. You begin the delicate process of shaping iron into something vaguely botanical. It's frustrating. It's fiddly. It's not what iron wants to do. Iron wants to be a horseshoe, a hinge, a sword, not a twirly little leaf pattern for someone's parlor. Your hands hate it. Your fingers keep slipping. You burn your thumb 3 times, and there's a moment when the whole thing falls apart on the floor in a tangle of metal and foul language, uttered in your head because you're trying to be mature. You take a break, sip some ale, let your fingers rest. They twitch, even at rest, like they're trying to forge a nail in their sleep. Eventually, the curls come together. Not perfect, but convincingly leafy. You mount them on the grill and show your father. He squints, shrugs, and mutters, looks like a plant. Success! But your hands, oh, your hands. They're throbbing. You have minor cuts along your knuckles and one particularly rude burn on the webbing between your thumb and forefinger. You wrap it with a strip of cloth that was once part of your sleeve, then dip your fingers in the water barrel, letting the sting remind you you're still alive. Very, very alive. Later, a customer comes in with a broken door latch. He's one of those types who insists on watching. Close. Too close. You can feel his breath on your shoulder and his judgment on your soul. As you grip the tiny latch in your soot-slick fingers, it slips and slices your thumb. You pause. Not because of the pain, you've graduated past flinching, but because the blood is immediate, dramatic, and deeply inconvenient. You grab a rag, wrap it tight, and keep working. The customer starts to say something but stops when your father slowly looks up from the bellows with the expression of a man who once intimidated a tax collector into apologizing. Latch fixed. Customer gone. The thumb is still attached. You return to your work, now slightly stickier. Historians still argue whether medieval blacksmiths had any genuine concept of hand care. One school of thought believes they powered through the damage. Another suggests they used herbal salves and poultices, or screamed into the forge and hoped for the best. You fall into the rapid ignore it, keep going school. You're practically tenured. At night, when the forge dims and the air turns soft and smoky, you sit and look at your hands. Not with disgust, not with pride even, just recognition. They've become tools themselves. Bent, tough, reluctant to rest. They tell a story. Every burn is a mistake. Every scar is a lesson. Every crooked knuckle is a reminder that this life is hard, but so are you. And still, with all the cuts and blisters, you trace the curve of that iron rose you made earlier. It's a little silly, it's a little delicate, but real and beautiful. Your father sees you, pauses, and, this might be your imagination, smiles. Not a big one, barely a twitch at the corner of his mouth, but it's something. "You'll need new gloves," he says, then tosses you a pair of his old ones. Top, thick leather, burnt around the edges, still warm. Top, you slide them on. Top, they're too big, too stiff. Top, but you'll grow into them. Let's take a moment to appreciate what you're breathing every day. Ah, medieval forge air. Rich, full-bodied, with notes of charcoal, iron oxide, and just a hint of existential dread. If lungs could file a complaint, yours would have done so years ago, possibly by tying themselves in a knot and mailing themselves out of your chest. The forge doesn't just get hot, it steams your insides. The smoke curls in slow, lazy spirals that seem oddly personal. It clings to your clothes, seeps into your pores, and makes a home deep in your sinuses. You've forgotten what fresh air smells like. Someone once described a pine forest to you and you thought, is that the one with the immaculate kind of soot? The forge is supposed to have ventilation, and supposed to. There's a hole in the roof, a smoky skylight that theoretically lets air out. It invites the wind to blow the smoke right back in. There's also a window. Not one that opens, just a rectangle someone forgot to fill with bricks. So you breathe what you have. And what you have is thick, warm, metallic fog. You've developed a cough. Not the hacking, dramatic kind. No, this one is subtle, occasional. It's the cough that sounds like you're trying to clear your throat, but only end up reminding everyone you're slowly turning into a chimney. Your father doesn't talk about the cough. He has it too. So did your grandfather, allegedly. It's a family tradition at this point. You've accepted that one of your lungs probably looks like a burnt sock. Today, you're working on grinding down a set of horseshoe nails. Simple enough. But grinding means sparks. Sparks mean smoke. Smoke means your eyes start to water almost instantly. You blink, you squint. You tell yourself you're not crying. It's just the forge giving you a passionate hug via the respiratory system. To protect yourself, you wrap a rag around your mouth and nose. It's not fancy. It's barely clean. But it's better than nothing. Sort of. It absorbs sweat, fogs your breath, and occasionally slides off at the worst possible moment. But at least it makes you feel like you're trying. As you hammer, you glance at your hands, now permanently dusted with soot, grease, and iron dust. Like snow in the world's most apocalyptic winter, you see a layer of ash settle on your sleeves. The light filtering in from the roof highlights it all, turning your forge into a strange cathedral, if the saints were anvil-shaped, and the incense gave you mild lung damage. Next time, midway through your work, next time, you feel that tightness in your chest again. Not pain exactly, just pressure. Like your ribs have decided to hold hands and never let go. You sit briefly, breathing shallowly, waiting for it to pass. It does. It always does until the next time. Protective gear? Ha. Gloves, yes. Apron. Anything for your lungs? Just optimism and a rag soaked in last month's sweat. You've heard of masks made from waxed cloth and herbs, but they're for plague doctors and very rich hypochondriacs. You, meanwhile, consider yourself lucky when the wind shifts and clears a patch of breathable air for 30 glorious seconds. Sometimes, you wonder what this is doing to your body in the long term. Then you remember you don't have the luxury of long term. You think in hours, days, maybe weeks. You work until the job is done. Then you sleep. Then you do it again. Scholars might one day debate whether blacksmiths knew about the risks to their environment. Maybe they didn't. Perhaps they just ignored it. Or maybe, like you, they took one look at the forge and said, well, this is where I live now. In the afternoon, the grind continues, literally. You file down a rusted latch, the metal dust rising like glitter from some extremely cursed fairy. You sneeze. It's black. You don't panic. That's normal. Probably. Smoke the forge cat slinks past, tail high, completely unbothered by the haze. You envy his lungs. You swear he's part dragon. Later, a tanner drops by to pick up a repaired hide scraper. He takes one step into the forge and immediately starts coughing. "Good grief," he wheezes. "How do you breathe in here?" You shrug and gesture vaguely at the rag across your face. He eyes it like it's made of gold and witchcraft. "Smart. I should try that." He says this as he walks outside and immediately breathes in the fresh country air. You wave from your fog cloud. Evening comes. The fire cools. The haze softens into a metallic mist. You sit outside on the doorstep, letting the wind carry away some soot from your shoulders. You breathe. Shallow. Careful. The stars begin to peek out. You watch them, wondering how far away they must be from the smoke. How clean their air must be. You wonder what it would be like to stand at the top of a mountain and fill your lungs with air that doesn't taste like a broken horseshoe. But that's a dream. A nice one. Once you hold on to it like a charm in your pocket. For now, your world is fire and smoke. It's not clean. It's not easy. But it's yours. Sometimes the air inside the forge has decided to declare war on you. Not aggressively, not all at once. Just steadily, patiently. It's like a slow brewing plot by a grumpy elemental spirit who resents your continued breathing. There's smoke, the ever-present curtain of swirling soot that dances between your face and anything you're trying to see. It wraps around your head like a clingy scarf you didn't ask for. But that's just the beginning. Because today, you're not just contending with regular smoke. Today's menu includes bonus ingredients, metal filings, charred leather, and a delightful spritz of burning oil. It starts with a small repair job. A traveling merchant brings in a lockbox with a bent hinge and a lid that sticks, like it's trying to guard royal secrets. You open it, and out wafts a scent that immediately burns your nostrils. Possibly varnish, possibly disaster. The lock is greased with something that might have been bear fat. It smokes when heated. It smokes a lot. Your eyes start watering before you've even touched the file. You open the forge door, hoping for a breeze. Instead, you get a strong gust that kicks up the ash pile and blows it directly into your face. Beautiful. For a brief moment, you achieve the look of a man who just tried to kiss a chimney. You don't scream. You've learned that screaming invites more smoke into your lungs. You wipe your face with your sleeve, which is somehow dirtier than your face, and keep working. Your father walks in and immediately wrinkles his nose. "Smells like boiled gremlin in here," he mutters. You respond with a cough that sounds like it might be forming an actual word. Maybe help. Maybe hazard. He shrugs and goes back to pumping the bellows. This is your life now. The smoke is constant, but the particulates make it personal. You grind a blade later that afternoon, and the air becomes filled with glittering sparks and a gentle iron mist that settles in your lungs like it's apartment hunting. You try tying a fresh rag around your face, but it's already soaked from earlier and smells like fermented foot. Lovely. Historians still debate whether medieval blacksmiths understood the long-term effects of breathing this kind of stuff, day in and day out. Some think they accepted early death as part of the job description. Others argue they used herbal infusions to clear the lungs, though no one has yet found evidence of a blacksmith sipping tea while muttering, "Ah yes, this time will offset the 5 pounds of molten soot I inhaled this morning." You opt for the tried and true method. Deal with it, because the moment you stop swinging the hammer, things pile up. Tools rust, orders back up, the village starts knocking. And let's be honest, resting is harder than coughing. The real surprise isn't the damage to your lungs. It's how quickly your voice changes. You used to sound like a normal kid. Now your voice has taken on a rasp so distinctive that birds pause mid-flight to wonder what cursed wind just blew past. You can say "pass the tongs" and make it sound like a death rattle. Your throat always feels dry, dusty. It's like it's storing coal shavings for winter. You drink water constantly, but it never helps for long. You try honey once, courtesy of the monk who feels bad watching you slowly become a human chimney, but it turns your cough into a sticky, sweet mess. You go back to water and well-timed sarcasm. Despite it all, you keep working. Because the forge isn't just your job, it's your heartbeat, the rhythm of your days. And complaining doesn't cool the coals. Later in the day, a shepherd brings in a bell that needs reforging. You take it happily. Bells are lighter work, gentler. You heat the metal and shape it slowly, minding the edges. There's a calm to it. Even the smoke thins a little, as if giving you one small break before trying to suffocate you again tomorrow. The shepherd offers you a coin and a wool scarf as payment. You accept both. The coin is for food. The scarf might make a decent makeshift face cover. You wrap it around your mouth and nose. It smells like sheep, but honestly, that's an upgrade. Evening comes with a hush. The fire dims. The air cools, slightly. You sit on the step outside the forge, scarf still in place, watching the village wind down. A few lanterns glow in windows. Somewhere, a dog barks at a cloud. You cough softly into the scarf. Just one. Then, silence. The stars emerge, blinking down like curious witnesses. You take a breath. It's not clean. It's not fresh. But it's enough. By now, you and your tools have developed a complicated relationship, part necessity, part vendetta. They don't just rest on the workbench. They loom there, watching, judging, and waiting for the perfect moment to betray you in front of an audience. Your hammer? You've named it. Not affectionately. It's more like out of spite. Some days it's old reliable. On other days it's you useless lump of iron. You've swung it so many times your shoulder now clicks when you raise it, like a creaky hinge that's given up but refuses to retire fully. Then there are the tongs. Oh, the tongs. Slippery, clunky, and uniquely skilled at pinching the exact part of your finger that's already been pinched 6 times this week. They're essential, of course. Without them, you'd be handling hot metal bare-handed like a blacksmithing lunatic. But that doesn't mean you like them. You've got at least 4 pairs. None of them match. One's too loose, tight, and perfectly balanced, but has a sharp edge that occasionally slices you to remind you who's boss. Still, they're part of your life. You even dream about them sometimes, usually during nightmares. And let's not forget the chisel. Once sharp, now mostly just pointy adjacent. You use it for everything. Etching, splitting, poking, and, occasionally, as a lever when something gets stuck, and your dignity won't allow you to ask for help. You keep telling yourself you'll regrind it properly. You won't. But it's a nice thought. Your tool bench looks like a display of medieval dental instruments. Files, awls, punches, riveting tools. Each has its quirks and unique way of making you bleed, at least once a week. There's a long, thin rod that you only use for realigning bent latches. You lost it once and spent 2 hours blaming everyone else in the forge, only to discover it was tucked behind your ear the whole time. Your father didn't say anything. He just looked at you with that face that says, "This is why I drink ale before lunch." Your apron, that noble cracked leather vestment, is another story altogether. Once supple and new, it's now a patchwork of scorch marks, oil stains, and tears that tell the story of every sharp object that's ever tried to stab you. It weighs as much as a small child and creaks when you walk. Sometimes it even smokes a little. That's normal, probably. It's supposed to protect you. Mostly, it holds hot metal shards lovingly against your chest until you either dance it off or whisper to the fire gods for mercy. Still, you wear it with pride, or maybe stubbornness. The straps dig into your shoulders. The bottom edge curls like it's trying to retreat from whatever today's job will be. But you tie it on each morning like armor. Which, in a way, it is. You line up your tools every evening. It's a ritual. Not because you're neat. Let's not get carried away. But because if you don't, you spend half the next morning swearing at a missing punch while your father stares at you like he's rethinking the entire idea of fatherhood. You sharpen your blades on the stone wheel, sparks flying into your apron, occasionally your boots, once into your ear. That was a weird day. You oil the hinges on your pliers. You realign the hammerheads that drift loose with every 100 swings. You even wrap your favorite chisel in a bit of cloth when you put it away. You don't know why. Maybe because, despite all the cuts and bruises and muttered curses, it's your chisel, and you respect it, slightly. Your fingers know each tool by feeling. You can reach for the right one with your eyes closed. Sometimes, You work with your eyes half closed. Usually around hour 10 when you've started mentally narrating your exhaustion, like a bad poetry reading. It's strange. These things hurt you, frustrate you, betray you, but you care for them. Because if one of them breaks, you're done. If the tongs snap, you can't hold the metal. If the hammer's head flies off, you're just a tired child waving a stick. If your files are dull, you can't finish the fine work. No tools means no job. No job means no bread. No bread means, well, more hunger-fueled hallucinations of anvils dancing. As you clean your tools under the forge's pale glow, you realize that they're not just equipment. They're companions. Reluctant, cranky, slightly dangerous companions. Like elderly relatives who only show affection by throwing things at you. You don't love them, not exactly, but you trust them, even when they bite. And that, in the life of a blacksmith, is as close to a warm hug as it gets. The tongs drop it. Again. That glowing red rod you spent 20 minutes carefully heating to the perfect temperature. Just hot enough to shape. Not so hot it turns into lava with commitment issues. Slips right through their stubborn jaws and lands with a dramatic sizzle on the floor. You watch it happen in slow motion, like a tragic stage play you've seen too many times. Your feet dance. You know the one. That quick shuffle of panic where you try to avoid both stepping on the metal and falling into the fire, all while muttering phrases like, "Oh no, why?" and "You traitorous tool." The rod rolls under the workbench. Great. Just perfect. You drop to your knees, the heat from the forge kissing the back of your neck as you fumble under the bench, trying to grab it before it brands the floor, your hand, or Smoke the cat, who's watching you with the judgmental calm of a furry landlord. You straighten up slowly when you finally retrieve it with another set of tongs, because you have a backup pair for when the first pair decides it no longer believes in gripping things. Your back cracks. Your knees sigh. Your eyebrows re-singed. The tongs? Resting innocently on the bench, like they didn't just attempt professional sabotage. You stare at them. They stare back. You consider throwing them into the fire, but you already did that once last month, and your father made you fish them out with a stick and gave you a lesson about emotional stability in the workplace. The truth is that tongs are an unpredictable species. Sometimes they behave like precise extensions of your hands, strong, nimble, and reliable. Other times they open randomly, as if they've just remembered they have free will. The grip is either too loose or too tight. The metal might slip or launch itself like a glowing iron javelin. And yet you can't do without them. There are long ones for deep fires, short ones for delicate work, bent ones for special angles, rusty ones you should throw away but keep just in case. You've tried oiling them, tightening them, gently whispering threats to them. They remain temperamental, like elderly dragons who occasionally agree to help you if they feel like it. Today, you're forging a gate latch. Nothing fancy. A clean curve, a sharp hook, something that won't stick during rain. You heat the bar, grip it with the better tongs, and start shaping it on the anvil. It holds for now. You tap, rotate, tap again. Then, on the last twist, the tongs slip again. Only a little. Just enough to make the latch crooked. You take a deep breath. Set the piece aside, and sigh the sigh of someone who is either about to weep or invent a better tool with their bare hands. File it out, your father says, without looking up. You do. Slowly. Carefully. Gently reshaping the twist like a nervous sculptor. Eventually it comes together. The latch clicks into place like it was always meant to be that way. Your father nods. Next time, use the spring-jawed tongs. Ah, yes. The ones pinch your fingers like tiny goblins every time you touch them. But he's right. They do hold better. So, you switch, and you bleed a little. But at least the latch doesn't fall into your shoe. By midday, your apron is dotted with ash, and your fingers are wrapped in more cloth than your skin. You sit down for a moment, drinking water and glaring at the tongs like they've personally offended your ancestors. You wonder briefly if anyone in history has ever made a pair that works. Historians still debate whether blacksmiths invented their tools or modified what they had. Some say each blacksmith developed their style of tongs, shaped over years of trial, error, and mild injury. Others believe they were passed down, sacred, and unchanging. You believe in the third option. Tongs are forged from spite, and no two are alike. The afternoon brings a farrier by with a half-dozen horseshoes. He watches you work and offers unsolicited advice. "Grip it lower," he says. You smile politely while thinking, "Grip this," and hammer. Your father hears, says nothing, but you can tell he's silently amused. You finish the horseshoes. Your tongs misbehave only twice. Improvement. As evening arrives, you clean the tongs. All of them, even the bad ones. You oil their joints, sharpen their tips, lay them out like sleeping snakes across the bench. You don't love them, but they're yours. And tomorrow, when they drop something again, you'll sigh, bend, and keep going. Because that's what blacksmiths do. Your apron is smoldering, again. You don't notice at first. It's just a warm patch near your ribs, which is normal in the forge. Everything is always warm, singed, or gently cooked. But then Smoke the cat swishes past and bats at the side of your apron like it's trying to save your life. That's your first clue. You look down and, yep, tiny tendrils of smoke are curling up from a fresh burn hole right above your belt. No flames, thankfully, just that slow, creeping sizzle of hot metal making its way through your outermost, and only, layer of defense. You smack at it a few times, casually, like this is just another Tuesday, which it is, and the glow fades. You pat the leather and sigh. That's the third new hole this week. Once proud and stiff with protective glory, the apron is now a weary mosaic of patched leather and lived experience. It was never perfect to begin with. The left strap has always been too long, and the right pocket is mysteriously shallower than the left. You tried keeping tools in it once, but they poked you in the stomach or fell out when you bent over. Now it just holds bits of rag and crumbs from lunches eaten too fast to remember. And yet, this apron is the only thing standing between you and a visit from the village healer, who treats burns with goose grease and ominous chanting. So, you wear it, every day. Despite the heat and the weight, it constantly smells like a campfire that fell into a soup pot. Today's job is a set of lantern brackets for the tavern. Simple hooks, but the owner wants them fancy. He says this while holding a mug and gesturing with the energy of someone who hasn't slept since the last harvest festival. You nod and get to work. You heat the iron, hold it steady with your moderately trustworthy tongs, and start shaping the curve. That's when the spark hits. It's always the tiny ones. Not the dramatic showers of sparks that explode when you strike steel. Those are polite, predictable. No. The little rebel embers sneak off when you're not looking and lodge themselves under your apron, between the folds, just above the waistband. That sacred, sensitive area you'd prefer stayed unsinged. Your apron is smoldering, again. You don't notice at first. It's just a warm patch near your ribs, which is normal in the forge. Everything is always warm, singed, or gently cooked. But then Smoke the cat swishes past and bats at the side of your apron like it's trying to save your life. That's your first clue. You look down and, yep, tiny tendrils of smoke are curling up from a fresh burn hole right above your belt. No flames, thankfully, just that slow, creeping sizzle of hot metal making its way through your outermost and only layer of defense. You smack at it a few times, casually, like this is just another Tuesday, which it is, and the glow fades. You pat the leather and sigh. That's the third new hole this week. Once proud and stiff with protective glory, the apron is now a weary mosaic of patched leather and lived experience. It was never perfect to begin with. The left strap has always been too long, and the right pocket is mysteriously shallower than the left. You tried keeping tools in it once, but they poked you in the stomach or fell out when you bent over. Now it just holds bits of rag and crumbs from lunches eaten too fast to remember. And yet, this apron is the only thing standing between you and a visit from the village healer, who treats burns with goose grease and ominous chanting. So you wear it, every day. Despite the heat and the weight, it constantly smells like a campfire that fell into a soup pot. Today's job is a set of lantern brackets for the tavern. Simple hooks, but the owner wants them fancy. He says this while holding a mug and gesturing with the energy of someone who hasn't slept since the last harvest festival. You nod and get to work. You heat the iron, hold it steady with your moderately trustworthy tongs, and start shaping the curve. That's when the spark hits. It's always the tiny ones. Not the dramatic showers of sparks that explode when you strike steel. Those are polite, predictable. No, the little rebel embers sneak off when you're not looking and lodge themselves under your apron, between the folds, just above the waistband. That sacred, sensitive area you'd prefer stayed unsinged. You jump, you jiggle, you slap at your stomach like trying to scare off a wasp that breathes fire. Your father glances over, utterly unfazed. He's seen this dance before. You extinguish the ember and pretend nothing happened. The apron, however, now has another burn mark, right next to the one from last month when you leaned too close to the coals while trying to retrieve your lunch spoon. You're starting to suspect the apron has a grudge. Historians might one day wonder what kind of protective gear medieval blacksmiths wore. They'll guess at thick leathers, wool tunics, maybe even metal greaves. They'll argue about the materials. But none of them will quite capture the emotional roller coaster that is wearing an apron that both protects you and threatens to murder you daily. You consider replacing it, briefly. But where would you get another? This one was your father's, and his father's before him. It has a history, character, a faint scent of tragedy. Also, the new aprons the leatherworker makes are stiff as bark and take 3 years to break in. You'd rather wear a cooked cabbage. So instead, you patch it again. You take a bit of scrap leather, cut it to size, and stitch it over the hole with thread that's both too thick and too thin. Your fingers cramp halfway through, and you poke yourself 3 times with the needle. But eventually, it holds. You run your hand across the surface. Rough, uneven, imperfect, but solid, like you. Later, you hang the finished lantern brackets on the rack, watching them catch the late afternoon light. They gleam faintly. Not because they're polished, who has time for that, but because they're fresh and the oil hasn't burned off yet. You unbuckle your apron and hang it by the forge, where it immediately slumps like it's just completed its shift and would like a pint of something cold and a nap in a hayloft. You rub your hands, stretch your back, and sip a mug of water with the faint taste of iron and ash. It's oddly comforting now, like forged tea. The evening breeze rolls in through the window, mercifully cool. You take a deep breath, not clean, not fresh, but cooler. You lean against the workbench, staring at the apron as it sways slightly in the breeze. It's tired. So are you. But both of you will be back tomorrow, smoldering, patched, and still swinging. Something strange has happened. The forge is quiet. Not silent quiet. There's always some crackling coal or groaning timber. But forge quiet. No hammering. No yelling. No scalded shouting about who left the tongs in the water bucket again. Just the soft hiss of cooling metal and your cautious breathing, like you've accidentally stepped into someone else's life. You freeze mid-sweep. The broom, a bundle of twigs tied to a stick with what you're pretty sure is last year's shoelace, pauses in your hand. Your ears strain. Did the bellows stop? Is that gasp a moment of peace? You look to your father. He's sitting, on a stool, just sharpening a blade. No barking orders, no muttering about lost nails. He catches your look, raises one eyebrow, and says absolutely nothing. That's how you know this is real. And that's when it hits you. Silence feels wrong now. You've spent so long surrounded by the symphony of blacksmithing, clang, hiss, thunk, grunt, that the absence of noise feels like a mistake, like you forgot something important, like the forge is holding its breath. You shuffle around, poking at tools unnecessarily to make a little noise. You restack the iron bars that don't need stacking. You cough. Nothing happens. Then, finally, blessedly, someone kicks open the door. My plow broke. You sigh in relief. All is well in the world. The man drags in a plow blade that looks like it's been used to fight bears. With dents the size of your fist and a crack running straight through the center, it's not so much a repair as it is an autopsy. But you accept it like a long-lost friend and set to work, grateful for the return of clamor. The forge comes alive again. The fire flares as you stoke it. The bellows puff, grateful for attention. You start hammering, and the metal sings. It's not a lovely song, more like a drunken bar tune, but it's familiar, comforting. Your father sharpens something in the background, the steady shock of the whetstone scraping against the blade. You hum under your breath, the rhythm returns. There's something almost musical about it all. The bellows whoosh, the fire crackles, your hammer strikes. Clang, pause, clang, pause. A steady beat. You don't even think anymore. Your arms move independently, muscle memory guiding each swing, each flip of the tongs. It's like your body has learned to dance. But instead of music, it follows the tempo of burning iron and the vibrations in your bones. Even Smoke, your feline forge companion, pads across the floor like he's keeping time. He settles under the workbench, curling into a soot-smudged donut and snoring faintly. You've trained your cat through sound. You feel both proud and vaguely concerned. A traveling minstrel once told you music soothes the soul. He'd never spent a day near a forge. Because here, this is music. Not lutes and ballads, but clangs and groans. The occasional hiss of steam when metal hits the water. The muttered swearing when someone misses the punch and gets a thumb instead. Even the creaking of the floorboards under heavy boots adds a bass note to the orchestra. And in the strangest twist of fate, you realize you like it. The noise, the chaos, the endless racket. It used to drive you mad when you were small and everything felt overwhelming. But now it fills you up. Drowns out the ache in your arms. It gives shape to your days. For a moment, you wonder what it would be like to leave, to walk away from the forge. What you'd hear instead. Birds, trees, the river, all lovely things. But quiet. Too quiet. The plow blade comes together nicely. You patch the crack with a sturdy seam, reinforce the edges, and give it a satisfying final polish. The farmer returns, eyes wide. Didn't think it could be saved, he says. You nod like it's nothing. Inside, you beam. He pays you with 3 eggs, a wedge of cheese, and something that might be bread or a rock. Standard village currency. Once he's gone, you return to sweeping. The forge isn't quiet anymore. It buzzes, hums, sings, in its own smoky, grumpy way. And you realize the silence didn't feel wrong because you're addicted to noise. It felt wrong because silence means stillness, and stillness means something's broken. You're not broken. Not yet. You sweep faster, the bristles scratching a quiet rhythm against the stone floor. You hum along. A forge lullaby, off-key, out of tune. But it's yours. You're the village's duct tape. That's the best way to describe your role now. Not a craftsman, not a humble artisan. You're the one they all turn to when something, anything, stops working. Hinges, rakes, weather vanes. A spinning wheel that just won't spin right. A frying pan handle that decided to depart mid-omelet. You don't even ask how half of these things got broken. You fix them. Because that's what blacksmiths do. Not just the glamorous stuff. Swords and shields and flaming dramatic horseshoes. Number the endless everyday parade of slightly embarrassing village disasters always finds its way to your workbench. Like the barrel hoops. Today, for example, you're elbows deep in rehooping a water barrel. The cooper insists he doesn't have time to do it himself, which is ironic considering he's sitting outside your forge eating an apple and offering unhelpful comments about symmetry. The barrel smells like mildew, regret, and something faintly fishy. The hoops are bent like they've been in a tavern brawl. You sigh, tap them back into shape, and try not to inhale too deeply. You've already breathed in enough forge dust to fill a small sandbox. You don't need to add mystery fungus to the mix. Then there's the bell. Not the elegant church bell you lovingly repaired weeks ago. Number this one, belongs to a shepherd who wants it to hang around the neck of his very assertive goat. You don't ask what that means. The bell is cracked in a place that makes it sound less like a ring and more like a confused sneeze. You fix it. You always do. By midday, your workbench looks like a flea market run by gremlins. Nails, broken hinges, bits of farm tools that may or may not have once been something else entirely. A pot lid, a chair leg, what looks like part of a windmill. Your forge isn't a forge. It's a mechanical confessional booth where all the broken sins come to be redeemed. Your father says nothing as he walks by. He raises one eyebrow at the pile. You shrug. He shrugs back. This is your regular now. A wheelwright brings in a shattered cart axle. You recognize it instantly. It's the same one you fixed last week. You stare at it. He avoids your gaze. I think a stone got in there, he says. You don't respond. You take it. Again. The most remarkable thing is that you've gotten good at this. You no longer pause when handed a mystery object. You spin it, test its weight, feel the fracture, and somehow, almost magically, you know how to fix it. Heat here. Flatten there. Reinforce this seam. Swap out that rivet. People think blacksmithing is a strength. But it's also intuition. It's understanding what went wrong. Not just mechanically, but philosophically. Like a mental therapist. Historians often write about smiths in grand terms. Armorer to the knights, forger of blades, wielder of fire and iron. And sure, those moments exist. But they forget the part where you spend 30 minutes trying to reattach a wagon door hinge for a guy who insists it's not urgent, but then stands over your shoulder, sighing every 30 seconds. It's not always glorious, but it's always important. You're the reason carts roll, doors open. Pans don't fall apart mid-stew. The village depends on you. Quietly. Constantly. They don't say thank you very often. Sometimes they don't say anything at all. But they come back. And that's something. In the late afternoon, the seamstress holds a bent iron hook used to hang fabric in her shop. She looks sheepish. I think I leaned on it too hard, she mumbles. You nod. Please take it. Heat it. Straighten it. It takes all of 2 minutes. She hands you a loaf of fresh bread in thanks. It's still warm. You accept it like it's a treasure. As evening falls, the village starts to quiet. You wash your hands, or at least attempt to, and sit outside the forge with the bread. It's dense. It's a little sour. Perfect. Smoke hops onto your lap, curls up like a purring question mark, and immediately gets covered in soot from your tunic. He doesn't care. You lean back against the doorway, eyes heavy, shoulders sore. Today, you didn't make a sword, or a shield, or a masterpiece, but you fixed a chair, a bell, and a goat accessory. And somehow, that feels just as heroic. You're halfway through reshaping a cracked saucepan when it hits you. You haven't stopped moving in days. Not really. There are breaks, technically. Moments when you sit down for a minute or gnaw on some suspiciously hard bread. But your body never rests. Not in the my limbs are at peace kind of way. No. Your muscles stay coiled, your fingers twitch, and your back is always one poorly timed sneeze away from permanent damage. The saucepan was dropped, someone said. Onto cobblestones. Off a cart. Possibly during a dance. They weren't clear. You don't ask. You mend the crack, hammer the shape back into something vaguely pan-shaped, and nod as the customer inspects it like they're evaluating royal armor. You know what's next. You always do. It's a little wobbly. Of course it is. You fix it again. Because that's the job. You keep going even when your hands shake and your neck sounds like someone walking on dry twigs. The forge doesn't wait for you to feel well. The iron won't shape itself. The tools won't hop back onto the rack after cleaning. You're tired, deep tired, the kind that settles in your bones and whispers, just lie down, anywhere. The floor looks nice. But you don't. Because you have one more job. Always one more job. Your father, who operates on steam and suspicion alone, is still going. He's reshaping a gate latch, eyes narrowed in concentration. You envy his stamina. Or maybe you don't. Perhaps you envy how he doesn't show it when he's hurting. You glance at your arms, bruised, scraped, calloused. They don't even look like your arms anymore. They're tools now, like your hammer or your tongs. Useful, dependable, slightly angry. Even Smoke, the cat, is tired. He's napping on a coil of chains, using a leather glove as a pillow. Do you consider doing the same? But instead, you clean up. You stack the tools, brush off the coals, wipe down the bench with a rag I gave up long ago. The forge quiets. The heat lingers. And now it's finally time. You ease down onto the stool, not quickly, not gracefully. You lower yourself like an elderly monk descending into meditation, joints creaking in protest. Your shoulders slump, your eyelids flutter, your mind drifts. And for once, the fire doesn't roar. It purrs. You let the glow soothe your eyes. Let the warmth seep into your bones, not in that blistering, punishing way, but gently like an old friend wrapping you in a smoky blanket. You listen to the coals crackle. The wind shifts through the forge's gaps. The sound of boots in the distance. A cow mooing far away. Life continues, but it no longer asks anything of you tonight. You exhale. The embers dim. Your heart slows. And in this quiet, golden warmth, everything softens. The aches blur into the background. The blisters don't sting quite so sharp. The world narrows to the hum of metal cooling and the faint hiss of a forge that, for once, is satisfied. You lean your head back. Let your muscles melt. Let your thoughts fade. Let the night wrap around you like the apron you forgot to take off. Just for now. It's okay to rest. Just for now. You've done enough. Just for now. Sleep. The rooster crowing outside the forge is either very optimistic or confused because the sun hasn't fully risen, and you certainly haven't. You open one eye to the gray glow of dawn and the smell of burnt leather. You hope that's just your apron, not your dreams trying to tell you something ominous. Your back makes an alarming sound as you sit up. A series of pops, cracks, and one faint squelch, probably from yesterday's stew spill that nobody cleaned up. Your fingers are stiff, curled like claws from sleeping in your apron again. You stretch them out one by one, like tiny reluctant soldiers reporting for duty. You move toward the fire out of instinct. It's still glowing faintly, embers pulsing in their quiet rhythm. You stoke it gently, like waking a sleepy dragon. The forge yawns back to life. Today's job? A full iron gate. Yes, a gate, not a latch. Not a hinge, a full-sized swing it with both hands, keep the wolves out kind of gate. Ordered by a landowner from 2 villages over, who insists it must be sturdy but elegant, and not too pokey. He left that note specifically. His previous gate was too aggressive. You and your father examine the blueprints, just sketches on a stained cloth that looks like it doubled as a cheese wrap. The gate must be wide enough for a cart, tall sufficient to intimidate, and decorative enough to impress people who have never considered the labor behind twisting iron into spirals. You start with the frame. Simple bars first, long, heavy, and uncooperative. Getting them up on the trestle takes everything you've got. You grunt. The bars groan. Your shoulder makes a sound you choose to ignore. You heat the ends and begin bending them to shape. Each twist takes time, strength, and persuasion, sometimes in the form of whispered threats. You've learned that metal responds better to quiet determination than brute force. Well, mostly. Your father shapes the hinges. He does it with the air of someone performing a ritual. Measure, mark, heat, strike. His hands don't even hesitate anymore. You try to match his pace. You don't. But you're close. Halfway through the day, your hands are coated in black grit. Your hair smells like scorched wool. You've got soot in your eyebrows again. You catch your reflection in the water bucket and wonder if a charcoal spirit has possessed you. Lunch is bread, cheese, and something pickled that crunches suspiciously. You eat it anyway. Hunger dulls the part of your brain that would usually ask questions. Back to work. Now it's time for the decorative parts. The spirals, the finials. The little curlicues look effortless in the sketch but take hours to coax into existence. You heat the narrow rods, shape them around a jig, and curse quietly as the first kinks. You fix it. Start again. This time, the spiral flows smoothly. You quench it in water, hear the satisfying hiss and smile. It's not perfect, but it's beautiful. The gate takes shape. Slowly, piece by piece, bar by bar, curve by curve. You bolt them together, fit the hinges, test the swing. It doesn't creak. It sings, low and deep, like the forge's sigh of approval. The landowner arrives just as you're giving the final polish. He steps down from his cart, wrinkles his nose at the soot, and says, You hold your breath. He walks the length of the gate. He taps it with a ringed finger, inspects a curl. Then he says, "It'll do," which, from a landowner, is a love poem. He pays in coins, heavy, honest, clean. You bite one, just to be sure. Your teeth hurt, but it's real. As he carts the gate away, you and your father watch it disappear down the road, your handiwork now part of someone else's world. You sit together on the forge steps, both too tired to speak. You sip warm water. He sharpens a chisel. Smoke curls around your boots, purring. And you think, just for a moment, that gate will outlive you. It'll stand through storms, through seasons, through the slow passage of decades. And no one who walks through it will know your name, but they'll feel your work every time it swings open. And somehow, that's enough. You start the day with a splinter. Not from wood, mind you. That would be too reasonable. No. You get a splinter of iron lodged just beneath your fingernail. You're not sure how it got there. 1 minute, you're filing a hinge pin. The next, your finger starts throbbing like it's trying to signal Morse code. You hold it up to the light, squinting. A tiny, evil sliver glints at you smugly. You contemplate your options. Tweezers, missing. Your teeth, questionable. Or asking your father. Risk of emotional injury, high. You settle for a sewing needle heated in the forge and 10 minutes of quiet cursing. Eventually, it surrenders. Battle won. With that handled, you move on to your main project, reinforcing a wagon chassis. The frame is wooden, the bolts are rusted, and the whole thing groans like it's been carrying a midlife crisis for years. The farmer who owns it says, "Just make it strong enough to survive another season." Which, as you've learned, is villager speak for, make it last forever, but pay like it's temporary. You slide under the wagon, tools in hand, and immediately regret it. Cobwebs, splinters, something squishy. You don't investigate. You brace the iron bands, hammer new rivets, and try not to inhale anything that moves independently. Back in the forge, you forge extra brackets for reinforcement. The hammering rhythm returns. Clang, clang, clang. Your arms ache in familiar ways. Your shirt clings to your back. Sweat trickles down your neck and somehow finds the exact burn from 2 days ago. Your father peers under the wagon, nods once, and says, "Could be worse." High praise. Midday brings a sudden visit from the village healer. She arrives not with medicine but with a request. A set of small iron hooks for hanging herbs. Someone borrowed her last ones to roast eels. You take the order with a straight face. While shaping the hooks, she sits nearby, telling stories about illnesses you've never heard of but hope to avoid. She hands you a jar of something green and sticky for your hands. You try it. It smells like wet moss and regret. But your fingers do feel better afterward, slightly less like dried jerky. Then comes a rare moment. Your father lets you take the lead. The next carpenter client needs a new brace clamp for his workbench. Your father steps back and folds his arms, leaving you to measure, mark, and forge it from scratch. It's a tricky shape, requiring 2 bends and a secure catch. You fumble the first heat, too soft. The second, too brittle. The third time, though, is just right. You strike the final rivet, polish the edges, and hand it over. Your father inspects it. He doesn't say anything. He hands it to the carpenter, takes the coin, and walks away. And that's when you realize something. He trusts you now. Not with everything, not with the big jobs, but enough. You've moved from helper to partner. Not officially, no titles, but it's there. In the silence, in the way he let you finish the job, in the way he didn't correct your grip or redo your work when you weren't looking. You sit down afterward, slightly stunned. It's a small thing, a clamp, but it feels bigger. Later that evening, you clean your tools constantly, but this time, you pause at the new chisel you made last week. It's still sharp, still solid. You pick it up, give it a spin in your hand, and smile. Your father walks by and drops something beside you. A new set of leather gloves. Not his old ones. New. You blink. Look at him. He shrugs. Your hands are no good to me if they fall off. Which, from him, is a love letter. You slide the gloves on. They're stiff. They'll take time to soften. But so did you. Rain. Not the soft, poetic kind that makes the grass greener and the birds sing. No. This is medieval rain that slaps rooftops, floods wagon paths, and turns the village square into a competitive mud wrestling pit for geese. You wake to the sound of it thundering on the forge's shingles like an army of angry drummers. And, of course, you're expected to work. The forge, being half open to the elements by design and stubbornness, has a roof that leaks in two particular spots, one directly over the sharpening stone, and the other precisely where you like to keep your bread. You move the bread. The sharpening stone remains moist. You wrap your cloak tight, step into your damp boots, and squelch over to the anvil. It's cold. It sizzles when you lay a hot iron rod on it, like bacon, but sadder. Your father is unfazed by the weather. He moves through the forge like a steam-powered golem, heating the bellows, checking the coals, and muttering something about good iron weather, which means humid enough to make everything slightly more terrible. Today's task is a rain gate. Yes, that's a thing now. A small iron fence is designed to keep pigs from sliding into the baker's cellar whenever it floods, which is often. You shake your head but start forging. A gate is a gate, even to stop soggy hogs from invading someone's flour supply. You heat the bars, hammer the curls, and try not to step in the puddle that has formed suspiciously near the quench barrel. You fail. Your left boot is now half full of muddy water, and for the rest of the day, it squelches with every step like an old accordion filled with frogs. The rain doesn't let up. It seeps into everything. Your gloves, your collar, your eyebrows. Even the fire seems to hiss with annoyance, flaring and sputtering like it's catching a cold. A neighbor brings in a broken weather van. Iron rooster. The wind snapped it clean off. "Can you fix it?" he asks, knowing the answer. You nod and set to work, re-welding the base and reattaching the rooster with a little extra flourish. A tiny ridge along the tail. It's your signature in a way. No one will notice, but you'll know it's there. While the rooster cools, you step outside under the eaves, staring at the rain-soaked world. The road is soup. The barn across the path has a shiny new waterfall cascading from its roof. The chickens are angry and wet. Smoke, the cat, is nowhere to be seen. Probably asleep in someone's laundry. The air smells like wet earth, damp wool, and just a hint of burnt lard. Back in the forge, you dry your hands on a cloth that's only slightly less wet than your tunic, and start bending the rain gate into shape. You've gotten good at this. You find the flow even with the iron slick and the tongs misbehaving like gremlins. You hum as you work, just loud enough to compete with the hammering rain. The baker passes by at one point, soaked to the bone, holding an umbrella made of oiled cloth and desperation. He sees the gate in progress and gives you a thumbs up, which coming from him is equal to an epic poem in praise. You finish the gate by evening. It's solid, a little ugly, and what the pigs deserve. You deliver it in the rain, trudge back with coins jangling in your apron, and dump your boots by the fire. Steam rises from your socks. You stretch your legs, watch the coals crackle, and feel the familiar ache settle into your spine like a sleepy goblin finding its favorite chair. Your father tosses you a cup of warm ale. You sip. It isn't perfect, but also comforting. He glances at you, soaked, soot-streaked, grinning like an idiot. "Still dry in the lungs?" he asks. You cough lightly. Not from sickness, just smoke and weather and, well, life. "Mostly," you reply. He nods. The rain drums louder. The forge glows warmer. And somehow, despite the puddles, the blisters, and the rooster who now spins slightly off balance in the wind, it's a good day. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that doesn't scream. It sighs. Long, quiet, and bone deep. That's the tired you feel this morning. Not the dramatic kind. Not the flop down and sob kind. It's just a slow, creeping weariness that wraps around you like the apron you forgot to untie last night. Your muscles ache in new places. Your eyelids feel heavier than your tool belt. And yet, as always, the forge is awake before you are. The coals still glow, the bellows still creak, and your father is already muttering about someone misplacing the flathead punch, which was probably you. Today is inventory day. Oh yes, the least glamorous of all blacksmithing tasks. No forging, no sparks, just counting, weighing, sorting piles of nails that all look identical until you realize some of them are secretly bent like question marks and others are plotting an escape. You begin with the rivets, small, angry little things that hide in every corner of the shop. You sort them by size, occasionally tossing one across the room in frustration. You tell yourself you're aiming for the bucket. You are not. Then come the bars, wrought iron, pig iron, scrap iron, mystery iron. You organize them into neat rows along the wall. It lasts 3 hours before someone, also probably you, knocks them all down like an elaborate metal domino line. And of course, the tools. Hammers, tongs, punches. Half of them don't have proper names. Nicknames your father uses like Thumbbuster or that one that bends. You inspect them individually, clean off the rust, oil the hinges, and pretend you're not still mad at the tongs from 2 days ago. A familiar face pokes in while you're elbows deep in sorting awls and chisels. The charcoal merchant's daughter. She's delivering a new sack, face smudged with soot, arms roped with strength that could snap an ox's neck if she wanted to. She drops the sack near the coal bin and gives you a nod. You nod back, trying to seem cool while holding a tin of mismatched washers and one greasy elbow. "You missed one," she says, pointing to a bolt under the bench. You retrieve it with all the grace of a goose on ice. She vanishes into the rain, leaving behind the scent of pine smoke and unasked for adrenaline. You shake it off and return to sorting with slightly more enthusiasm and a new appreciation for showers. After inventory, you help your father repair the bellows. They've been wheezing lately, leaking air like a sleeping dog. You patch the seams with boiled leather and beeswax, holding them closed while your father grumbles and sews like a tailor cursed with soot and unreasonable tools. It's oddly peaceful, just the two of you working together. No customers. There is no noise except the occasional snort when the wax catches fire or stitch snaps, and he mutters something unholy under his breath. You finish by mid-afternoon and finally sit down. Then, of course, the village arrives, one after another, like they were waiting behind a curtain. A boy with a broken shovel, a woman with a bent key, a man claiming his fireplace grate just exploded. You don't ask. You patch, pound, repair, repeat. Your favorite is the girl who brings in a necklace of thin iron links. "Can you fix the clasp?" she asks. You can. It's delicate work, not your usual hammer and fire affair. You sit quietly, threading the needle, reshaping the loop. Your fingers tremble slightly, not from nerves, but from the sheer volume of work they've done today. When it's done, she beams. No one beams at a blacksmith. You usually get grunts. At best, a nod. You don't know what to say. So you say nothing. Later, your father claps you on the shoulder. Not hard, not soft, just enough. "You're almost there," he says. You don't know where there is, but it sounds good. That night, after the forge cools and the tools are neatly, well, mostly, stacked on the rack, you sit by the fire, hands in your lap, staring into the embers. They pulse like a heartbeat. Yours. You've been tired for weeks. But tonight, it's a proud kind of tired. The best kind. You've just finished scraping a week's worth of soot from under your fingernails with a sliver of iron when a scream erupts outside the forge. Not a dramatic someone's been attacked kind of scream. It's more like a panicked, I dropped something expensive into a well scream. You glance at your father. He doesn't move. That's the forge rule. If it's not on fire here, it's not your problem. But curiosity is more substantial than soot fatigue, so you step outside. Turns out, it's the potter's apprentice. She's frantically waving a broken kiln rod over her head like it personally betrayed her. It probably did. Kiln rods are delicate things, not your usual iron brute force job. But you take it from her gently, nod, and assure her it's fixable. She exhales in relief like you've just reversed a curse. You pocket the rod and step back inside. Your father hasn't looked up. Another emergency? Kiln rod, you say. He grunts. You can't tell if it's sympathy or a judgmental, potters are dramatic. You get to work. It's fine detail work. Reshaping the end, smoothing the notch, making sure it'll hold weight without cracking. You like jobs like this. They make you slow down. Focus. They remind you that blacksmithing isn't always thunder and fire. Sometimes it's the gentler art of giving structure back to something fragile. And speaking of fragile, your boots are falling apart. The sole of your left boot is peeling off like it's trying to escape the profession altogether. You trip over it 3 times before you finally give up and sit down to repair it. The process is humiliating. You stitch it with a leftover cord, patch it with scrap leather, and hope no one notices the toe looks suspiciously square now. But when you stand up, it holds. You've officially blacksmithed your own feet back into function. This is what success looks like. As you admire your Frankenstein footwear, a messenger arrives. A boy from the next village over, soaking wet and out of breath. You're needed, he pants. A wheelwright's shop burned down. He needs tools, urgently. Of course, he does. You pack a quick kit, hammers, punches, a spare pair of tongs, and a heavy wrench that's probably overkill but feels comforting. Your father nods once, approving the list. No words, just a nod. That's how you know it's serious. The walk takes hours. The rain has softened the roads into pudding. Your boots, both repaired and resentful, squish with every step. But when you arrive, the scene is worse than expected. Charred beams, soot-covered everything. The wheelwright sits on a log, holding a bent spoke and looking like he's aged 10 years in a night. You kneel, unpack, get to work. There's no forge here, only embers. But there's heat enough to soften small parts. You improvise, heating iron in the ashes, shaping it over stone, cooling it in rainwater from a bucket. It's rough, but it works. You work in silence. The wheelwright watches. Eventually, he joins in, handing you tools and helping hold parts steady. 2 tired men rebuilding small things in a ruined space. By the time you finish, you've restored half a dozen tools, a hammerhead, 2 clamps, a spoke driver, and a brace joint. It's not much, but it's something. The wheelwright clasps your hand, eyes wet. Not from smoke or rain, just gratitude. You saved my shop, he says softly. You shrug. You'd have done the same. He nods. Maybe, but you did it first. He pays in trade. A small pouch of rivets, a carved pipe, and a wrapped loaf of barley bread. You accept all 3 like precious artifacts, and you start the long walk home. Your legs ache, your shoulders burn, but your heart walks lighter. You arrive after sundown. The forge glows in the distance, that warm orange pulse like a lighthouse for the weary. Your father meets you at the door and doesn't ask what happened, just hands you a cup of something warm and bitter. Tool bag still full? He asks. You shake your head. Full of better things. He grunts, a proud grunt, if there is such a thing. And as you sit down beside the forge, boots steaming, hands blistered, clothes damp, you smile. Because today, you didn't just fix metal. You fixed something human. The forge has moods. Some days, it's eager. leaping to life when you spark the kindling, flames dancing like excited puppies. On other days, like today, it sulks. The coals are sluggish, the fire wheezes like it partied too hard last night, and the bellows have all the enthusiasm of a damp sock. You coax it gently, feed it dry, kindling, pump the bellows with patience, whisper sweet nothings if necessary. Your father watches with a smirk. It senses your weakness, he says, sipping tea that probably counts as a solid. Still, you persist, and eventually, the forge wakes. Not happily, but enough to start the day. You're making a weather vane. A rooster, again. The last one you fixed also inspired the baker's cousin to demand one. Only bigger, with more tail flourish, and a proud posture. Because nothing says flower-powered social status like an ornamental iron chicken glaring at the horizon. You sketch the design more for your sanity than the client's. Then you start shaping the parts: spine, tail feathers, head, and that smug little beak. It's fiddly work. You burn your finger 3 times. You drop a small part into the fire and retrieve it with tongs and an elaborate string of muttered encouragements. Midway through, the schoolmaster appears. He's brought a broken ink pot stand made of brass. Decorative, fussy. He talks a lot. About philosophy, about how the stars guide fate, about how blacksmithing is an underappreciated metaphor for the human soul. You nod politely while hammering. He overlooks your eye twitch. Still, the stand is fixable. You straighten the legs, polish the top, and reaffixed a tiny hinge dangling like a tired eyelash. He's impressed. Remarkable. So precise, he declares. You must love this work. You pause. Consider that. Love. That's a strong word. Respect? Definitely. Endurance? Without question. But love? You think about it as you return to the rooster. You heat the tail section, twisting the feathers into elegant arcs. The shape is good, balanced, proud. You smile, just a little. Love and exhaustion aren't mutually exclusive. Later, a young boy brings in a snapped knife. It's my pa's, he says, holding the 2 pieces like broken bones. Dropped it while digging. You nod. Steel blade? He shrugs. It's sharp. You take it, test the break. It's a clean snap, old iron, brittle, but fixable with care. You weld the pieces back together, grind the edge, and give it a new handle. Wooden, wrapped in cord. Nothing fancy, but solid. When you hand it back, the boy's eyes light up. He's gonna be so mad he lost it, then so happy it's back, he says. You resist the urge to say, "Welcome to adulthood." Evening falls. You finish the rooster. Mount it on its base. It spins perfectly in the breeze, tail catching the light, head pointed with righteous poultry fury. You test it once, then twice. The wind spins it with a whistle. You show it to your father. He nods. Then he says, "Too proud. Looks like it judges me." You grin. Perfect, then. The client arrives an hour later, delighted, pays in coin and an awkward hug you were not prepared for. You stand frozen afterward, arms hovering like a startled tree. You spend the last hour of light organizing scraps and sorting the still good from the cursed. Your pile of offcuts is growing. Twisted rods, snapped bolts, bent nails. Useless for big projects, but you'll melt them all down one day and make something new. Something whole. Something entirely your own. You sit by the forge, sipping weak tea, listening to the wind turn the rooster above. And quietly, deep in your bones, you feel it. This is what you're built for. Not just the hammer and flame, but the repair, the rebuild, the pride in making something broken strong again. There's something poetic about how a forge sounds first thing in the morning. Not grand poetry, more like a grumbly tavern rhyme, rough around the edges but full of truth. The crackle of coals, the creak of wood, the puff of the bellows, like a tired beast waking up. It's a language you've come to understand, a sleepy duet between man and metal. Today your father isn't in the forge. That's rare. He left early to help mend a collapsed bridge on the river road. He took his hammer, travel kit, and a loaf of bread wrapped in oilcloth. He told you to mind the shop, which is his way of saying, don't burn it down or let the cat run the place. So it's just you, the fire, the tools, and the quiet. You could take a break, sleep in, sweep less thoroughly, but you don't. Not because you're scared he'll find out, but because you want to prove you can do this. All of it. You start with sharpening. Every edge in the place gets attention. Blades, chisels, the weird awl that only gets used once a year but somehow gets dull. You line them up afterward, shiny and sharp, like ducks in a particularly dangerous row. Then you tend to the forge. The coals are moody today, but you coax them into cooperation. The heat hums gently, not too aggressive. It's a good fire, a calm fire. It's the kind of fire you can think of. First customer, the weaver's husband. He holds out a snapped spindle axle like it personally offended him. You fix it in silence, then hand it back. He tries to pay with 2 eggs and an apology for the smell. You accept both. Next, a teenage girl with a broken belt buckle and a story about wrestling a goose. You don't ask for details. You nod, straighten the pin, and hand it back with a smile. She grins, wipes her hands on her tunic, and darts off into the village. Around midday, you pause to eat. Bread, a bit of cheese, and something pickled that makes your eyes water. You sit on the forge steps, chewing slowly, watching smoke bat at a beetle like he's been hired to test pest durability. And then he arrives. A knight. Not a polished, parade-type knight. A real one. Chainmail dulled by dust, cloak torn, sword notched along the blade. He walks like he hasn't slept in 3 days and hasn't seen a bed that didn't have fleas for 3 weeks. He holds out the sword. Can you fix this? You nod. Swallow your bite. Take the weapon. It's not just dull, it's weary. The edge is chipped. The handle is loose. The blade is slightly bent near the middle. You can almost feel the battles in it. Need it by tomorrow, he says. You nod again. And so, you begin. You heat the blade slowly, carefully. Too much, and it'll warp. Too little, and the steel won't yield. You grind the edge, polish the fuller, replace the leather grip with new wrappings. You tighten the pommel, reshape the guard, and, because it feels right, etch a small, almost invisible mark at the base of the blade. Not a signature, just a flourish. The sword lives again. The knight returns near sunset. He takes it in hand, swings once, then twice. His face stays stern, but his posture relaxes, just a little. Good, he says. He leaves 3 silver coins, and just like that, he's gone. You sit on the forge bench afterward, arms tingling, eyes gritty from the effort. But your chest? It feels light, like you passed some invisible test. When your father returns at dusk, he finds the forge swept, the tools in place, the fire dying neatly in its pit. Quiet day? He asks. You smile. Because today wasn't quiet. It was yours. You've been staring at a nail for 15 minutes. It's not a fancy nail. Not a mysterious, enchanted nail pulled from a knight's enchanted saddle. It's just a plain, iron nail. Bent. Slightly. Mockingly. You hold it in your tongs, squinting. You tap it on the anvil. You turn it over. It still refuses to be straight. You've reforged spears and repaired swords, reinvented spoons. And today, this single bent nail has become your sworn enemy. Smoke the cat watches from the shelf above, tail twitching in judgment. You sigh, toss the nail into the deal with later pile, and move on. Today is odd jobs day. It's the day when nothing major happens, but somehow you end up twice as tired. A pot handle reattachment, a lantern hinge, a keyring that has been used as a crowbar. You don't ask, you fix it. Your father is out again, this time inspecting the metalwork on the mill. You've been left to handle things. This means that people assume you are a blacksmith now. And strangely, they're right. You don't flinch anymore when someone brings in a complicated piece. You don't guess. You know. You measure, test the balance, and check the grain of the iron. You talk less, move faster, and rarely burn yourself on tools you took out of the fire. There's a rhythm to it now. Not just the hammer swing, but the movement of your body, your breath, and even your thoughts. It's like you and the forge have come to an understanding. It no longer feels like you're surviving the work. You're shaping it. In the afternoon, the village carpenter walks in with a challenge. A pair of ornate hinges for a fancy chest commissioned by the Reeves' wife. They need to be identical, symmetrical, and delicately floral. Of course, you sketch a few designs, hold them up, and watch as the carpenter nods with the heavy solemnity of someone who knows he's about to test your patience. You get to work. It takes hours. Twisting iron into elegant curls is more art than science. You use a bending jig your grandfather made, a strange-looking contraption with pegs and plates, and slowly form each curl, matching it to the one before. The second hinge refuses to cooperate. It droops, sags, sits awkwardly. You hammer gently. Bend again. Try not to swear where the cat can hear. Eventually they match. Perfect? No. But close enough that only a mirror would disagree. You cool them, polish them, and set them on the bench. The carpenter returns just as the sun is lowering. He inspects them for a full minute, lips pursed. Then he nods. She'll like these. You breathe out for the first time in what feels like 20 minutes. He leaves behind a small pouch of coins and a dried apple tart wrapped in cloth. It's still slightly warm. You eat it leaning against the doorframe, crumbs in your soot-streaked sleeves, watching the sun dip below the trees. The forge glows faintly behind you, like a sleepy dragon curling in for the night. And then, you spot the nail. That nail. Still bent. Still smug. You pick it up. Heat it. Set it on the anvil. One clean strike. Clang. Perfectly straight. You smile to yourself. Not because it matters, but because you can. The morning begins with delivery. Not the usual kind, dropped off by a sweaty farmer with a sheep under one arm and a broken latch in the other. No, this one's from the city, wrapped in linen. It is sealed with wax and carried by a messenger who looks like he's had enough dirt roads and grumpy chickens. Your father breaks the seal while you sip morning water and stare suspiciously at your boots, which have developed a squeak. The parchment unrolls slowly. It's a commission. From a guild. It's a real guild. A metalworkers guild from the next market town. They've heard of your forge. I heard of your work. Want a set of matching tools made by the blacksmith and his apprentice. A joint effort. Your father says nothing. He hands you the letter. You read it, reread it. Then, reread it as if the words might vanish if you blink too fast. Matching tongs, punches, a double-ended chisel, a leafing hammer, your forge, your hands. You're quiet the rest of the morning, letting its weight settle in. This isn't another broken rake or twisted frying pan handle. This is craftsmanship that will be judged by people who know what they're looking at, who will weigh the curve of your chisel against 100 others and decide whether it deserves a place on their wall or in their scrap pile. Your father begins forging the first punch. No instructions, no pep talk. He starts. You get the message. Follow along. You prep the steel for your tool. A pair of scroll tongs. Delicate, balanced. You haven't made a complete pair yet. Not without help. You heat the bar, shape the arms, and forge the jaws. One uneven tap, and they'll be misaligned forever. But your hands are steady. Your eyes are sharp. You've been training for this without realizing it. The first arm comes out smooth, clean, almost graceful. The second gives you trouble. It twists, warps. You toss it back into the fire. Try again, and again. On the third attempt, it holds. You file the grip, fit the rivet, quench it. When you test the finished piece, clicking the jaws together, listening to the gentle clack, it's not pride you feel. It's peace. The tools begin to stack. Your father makes the chisel. You do the final sharpening. He preps the leafing hammer. You shape the handle. Together, without speaking much, you build something beautiful. Each tool is oiled, wrapped, and placed in a wooden box lined with wool. Smoke curls around the corners of the forge as the final polish is done. At sunset, your father pulls out a small iron stamp, a mark. He hands it to you. You heat the chisel blade, press the mark into the base, and feel the soft thunk as it imprints cleanly. You didn't even ask what the mark was. You look down and realize it's your initials, your name. Your father claps your shoulder. Hard, a little too hard. "Let's hope they've got taste," he mutters. You both chuckle. That night, you lay in your cot and stare at the ceiling. You think about all the nails, the blisters, the ruined boots, the late meals, the bent hinges, the tiny burn near your ear that still hasn't faded. And now, your tools will go to people who don't know your name but will use what you've made. They'll grip those tongs, swing that hammer, trust those punches. And maybe I wonder who made them. It's the day of the delivery. The wooden box of tools sits by the forge door like a guest dressed too nicely for the party and wrapped, polished, and sealed. You cleaned it 3 times this morning even though it didn't need it. To make sure. To do something. You've been awake since before dawn. Not out of nerves exactly, but something close. Your boots are clean. Your apron isn't. That feels like the right balance. Your father is calm. Of course he is. He ties the cart straps with the same deliberate focus he uses to fit a horseshoe. The horse, borrowed from the innkeeper in exchange for 2 hinges and a promise, is remarkably unconcerned with your destiny. You load the box, tie it tight, climb up beside your father, and just like that, you leave. The road to the guild town is long but familiar. You've been there before, mostly to pick up iron stock or trade scrap. But never like this. Never present something, and never put your name, your work, out there to be judged. The wagon creaks. Birds chatter. A breeze cuts through the trees, tugging at your sleeves like it's trying to distract you from thinking too hard. Your father doesn't say much, but occasionally, he glances over with an unreadable expression, as if trying to say something through his eyebrows alone. You stop once to let the horse drink. You stretch your back, shake out your hands, pretend you're not rehearsing what to say when the guild master opens the box. The town appears like a mirage on the road. Taller buildings, shouting merchants, stone chimneys, the clang of other forges in the distance, strange and familiar all at once. You pull up outside the guild hall. It's bigger than you remembered, grand. Arched doors, the heavy iron sign above the entrance, no pressure. Your father hops down, knocks. A tall man answers, crisp apron, hair neatly bound, the kind of beard that says, "I judge chisel balance for fun." He says nothing, just gestures inside. You carry the box. It's not heavy, but it feels like a mountain. They lead you to a workroom, cool, clean, organized in a way that makes you suddenly very aware of the soot on your collar. You open the box. The tools are lifted one by one, measured, weighed, tapped against anvils, compared to drawings. There's whispering, nods. The chisel is passed around. The tongs were tested. The hammer spun in the air like a coin of fate. You say nothing. Then, finally, one of them looks up. "These'll do nicely." You almost laugh, almost cry, but instead, you nod. That's all it takes. A scribbled receipt, payment in silver, enough to buy a new anvil, maybe even new boots. Your father signs with a thumbprint. You do too. Your hands don't shake. Much. On the ride home, the air feels lighter. Your father eventually breaks the silence. "You did well." You nod, then smile. "You too." He snorts. "I always do." You both laugh. The kind of laugh that lets out something heavy you didn't realize you'd been carrying. The road is long, but it's yours now. And when you reach the forge, the fire is out. The coals are dark. But not for long. Because tomorrow, someone will bring in a broken latch, a cracked blade, a gate that needs mending, and you'll be here. Ready, steady, earned. Because now you're not just the apprentice, you're the blacksmith. The forge rests, not asleep, just still, quiet. It's like taking a deep breath after a lifetime of fire. You sit by the cold anvil, boots off, fingers wrapped around a mug of something warm. It is the kind of drink that doesn't taste good but reminds you you're alive. Your shoulders sag. Your hands are still. For once, they're not reaching for a hammer. Not curled around tongs. Just resting. The coals, long faded to ash, glow faintly in memory alone. The scent of smoke lingers in the walls. The stones. Your skin. It's not unpleasant anymore. Just part of the air. You close your eyes, and the forge echoes faintly behind them. Clangs, hisses, laughter. Your father's quiet grunt of approval. The creak of leather straps. The soft whistle of wind passing through open shutters. Sounds you've lived in. Sounds that live in you. Your arms ache, but not in protest. Your mind drifts, but not far. Just enough to remember. The tools, the noise, the people. The weight of iron is made light by practice. The quiet pride of repair. The deep, simple rhythm of being needed. There's peace in that. There are no swords today, no noble commissions. Just you, the warmth of the hearth, the beat of your heart, and a world outside these walls that still spins slowly on the axis of handmade things. So now let the fire sleep. Let your breath slow.